Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a vigilante part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story OneAMYak from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. Izuku is a simple boy. He wanted to be a hero. Hell, he saved 𝐀𝐦, technically. It wasn't even vigilanteism. It was. Well, Izuku didn't know if there was a word for it, as a vigilante is specifically someone who used their quirks for heroism without a license. Since Izuku didn't have a quirk, couldn't be a vigilante, or a hero, for that matter. Izuku was pacing in an alleyway, not knowing whether he wants to face his probably petrified mother or try to postpone it with a quick phone call so she knew he was safe, but not ready to be home. He did want to go, but dealing with his mother's anxiety might just break him for a second time today. Izuku pushed open the door to the apartment. "Mom, I'm home." He closes the door behind him, hearing the slightly frantic movements of his mother rushing to greet him. She practically lifts him into the air, squeezing him in a loving hug. "I see you, 𝐀𝐦. I saw the news and I was sorry, worried about you. Don't you ever run into another fight like that again or I swear to God I will ground you for the rest of your life." Izuku coughed slightly, being reluctantly let go by his still breathless mother. "Mom, I'm fine. Nothing bad happened and All Might was only a few seconds away when I ran in. I just wanted to distract the villain." Okay. 𝐀𝐻 really needed the help. He made this lie on the way home, but he hadn't actually seen All Might until he was there. But it was enough to make his mother relax slightly, sighing. "Izuku, it's dangerous for you to do that sort of thing, baby. Just leave it to the pros. It's their job after all." Izuku nods. "Yeah, I realize that. Now, I'm going to go think about some things in my room for a while, and I might go for a run or something later." Adrenaline release. Izuku mumbles, starting for his room. "All right, sweetie. I'm right here if you need to talk about anything." Like what Katsuki said earlier, Izuku waited until he was in his room to snort to himself, before sitting down at his laptop. Simply, Izuku needed ideas. Weapon ideas, fight ideas. He needed to be prepared. Not like today. No, he wasn't rushing into a fight unprepared again. He was smart enough to figure out something else. That something else was how he ended up here, in a gross, trash-covered beach, swinging around a staff he made. It is technically the second prototype, but the first one wasn't strong enough to hit anything, so Izuku had to redesign and even rented out a 3D printer for it. This staff was stronger, and even still retractable. It is about 1.5 meters long, a solid 15 centimeters in circumference. The internal structure was a bit more complicated, mainly consisting of triangle-type support pieces which, when compressed, locked into each other and made the small staff extra solid, which Izuku had actually managed to puncture an old barrel with. Packs a bit of a punch for something that was about 25 centimeters, a sixth of its extended length. Izuku swung the staff again, actually hitting his target can. He jumps in excitement, for once not caring about the noise level. He sets up more targets and slowly adjusts to the weight, balance, and length of his new weapon. He trained for about a week with the other one, which he couldn't extend all the way because of support reasons, and that put him off balance with it. This staff is way easier, though it has a bit more weight to it. Izuku was thinking about all the things he could add to his staff, like electricity or some kind of gas or spikes. Okay, not spikes. He didn't want to accidentally hurt someone via impalement. But there were options. Izuku didn't have to worry about the limitations of his quirk because he didn't even have one. All Izuku had to do was master using the staff. Or maybe a gun or something for long-range stuff. Bow and arrows. If he was sticking with the old-timey weapons as a motif. He didn't really know, but he knew he needed to train harder to get into UA. Maybe he could find someone to spar with him. Izuku also had taken up what was part running, part parkour. He made a circuit for himself to run along, which started at the beach and went up, through one building and then over the rooftops of a few before heading back through the beach, over one smallish mound of trash and back to where he started. When he got bored, or his arms were tired, he ran a loop. It was nice to change paces, too. Sometimes Izuku would barely even jog the track, and others he would push himself to his limits. At any rate, he had only been doing this for 2 weeks, and it was quite tiring. That's not even mentioning the nightmares he'd been getting. Drowning, mostly. Sludge, too, not just water. Sometimes it even had Bakugo forcing him into the sludge villain or the water, screaming about not needing help and how Izuku would always be useless. He was losing a lot of sleep for this reason alone. But he was okay, or so he claimed. He was getting stronger, and he knew he would sleep tonight, at least a little bit. Well, he didn't want to get his hopes up. Despite his tiredness, he was actually improving his aim. Well, his swings weren't controlled more by the wind than him anymore. Izuku wrote a few little improvement ideas in his notebook, now sitting cross-legged on top of a fridge that was halfway up the garbage pile. He might as well see it the staff could be used as a vault. though he'd be months away from using that in a fight or even Parker. It would be a good skill to have, though. Izuku plants the staff firmly in the trash pile, then throws his body weight forward, pulling the staff out of the pile before he tried to stick the landing. It didn't work, and Izuku lands flat on his back, coughing and wheezing when he tries to sit up. Fuck, needs improvement. Just head home and hope nothing is broken. Izuku thinks to himself before putting a hand on his knee and pushing himself to his feet, the world seeming to spin around him. He inhales, wincing at the sudden sharpness of the cool air. He needs a shower or something. He grabs his bag from the ground, retracting his staff and tucking it into his jean pocket. On the walk home, the pain in Izuku's chest and back eases significantly, but only down to a faint throbbing. Izuku swallows some painkillers, silently praying they help him sleep this off. Once home, Izuku has a shower, mainly to see the damage and hopefully ease the pain. Nothing is oddly shaped. Nothing sticking out, no bubbling in the lungs, just a bit of extra tension across his whole torso. Could have been worse if he landed on his head or neck. Izuku sighs, hoping to release anxious energy. After some dinner and a quiet chat with his mum, Izuku walks into his room and flops onto the bed, not bothering to crawl under the blankets before letting exhaustion and sleep take over his body. Izuku wakes, shivering, pushing himself up out of the bed violently. He feels the droplets of sweat running down his back and notes that his covers are soaked through as well. Fuck, just a dream. Izuku kneels on his bed, starting to strip off the covers and throws them into his washing basket. He glances at the clock. 2:35 a.m. Izuku sighs, getting up and stretching. Various bones click, and Izuku sighs in relief when he relaxes. He walks to his cupboard, pulling out a hoodie, just a plain gray one he got for his last birthday. He slips it on over his bare chest, recoiling slightly when it touches the sweatier part of his back. He looks at the track pants he fell asleep in and sighs. Good enough. Izuku walks out of his room, grabbing his staff, a notebook and a bottle of water on his way out. Might as well train for a while. Izuku pants down his pockets, then turns around to grab his phone. That is a requirement for his mother, who insisted that if she ever saw Izuku's phone in the house, but not Izuku, then she would have no choice but to assume a kidnapping. Not that anyone would kidnap a quirkless loser like Izuku, but he didn't want to argue with his mother. Izuku slips out of the door, locking it quietly behind him. He starts his walk to the beach, slowly taking his time to check alleyways and his usual blink spots. He feels the need to make sure he is aware of his surroundings more at night, especially in this area. That, and his nightmare still has his adrenaline levels elevated. Izuku takes to the rooftops to avoid a group of 5 men, all of whom are acting sus, constantly looking over their shoulders, jumping at the slightest movement. 2 of them seem to be suffering the effects of long-term drug use, twitching and picking at their own skin. Izuku crouches watching them carefully and was just about to go around them by at least 2 rooftops when he sees him. Izuku shrinks down more, carefully watching 𝐸, maybe even 𝐸𝐻, who is eyeing the men below, speaking quietly into his earpiece. Izuku wished he could turn around, but he wanted to see what was going to happen. He moves over a rooftop, moving more quietly than quickly. Izuku sees another in the alleyway next to him. He stiffens. Shit, this is some sort of raid. Izuku knew he shouldn't stick around, but he was still a fanboy at heart, so he just sneaks around to another alleyway, which would give him the perfect view of the raid. Izuku didn't struggle to make himself smaller, and he stayed perfectly concealed while the fight broke out. God, that's Eraserhead. The 𝐸𝐸. Izuku found himself scribbling so fast and wildly that he wondered if he would be able to even read this in the morning. Izuku bit his tongue slightly to keep him from muttering his thoughts aloud, shrinking further into his analysis. Izuku made a note to research what his capture scarf could be made out of and moved on to the other hero, another underground hero, Robin. His quirk allows him to make arrows out of light or darkness, and when it hits its target, if the target is a person, they freeze up completely. If not, it acts as a normal arrow, if a bit stronger than most. Izuku glances at the 2, who are now tying up the last of the thugs. Time for Izuku to leave. Izuku almost makes it across the rooftop before he feels something wrap around him, pulling him back. Come on. He was new to stealth, but he wasn't that bad, right? Izuku turned, tensing a bit at the glowing red eyes behind the gold goggles and floating hair of Eraserhead. Izuku tried to bite back his words again, but instead, he blurted out, "Are you trying to erase my quirk or something?" Eraserhead sighs. I guess it's not working, then. His hair falls down in front of his face. Izuku giggles, shaking his head. I don't have a quirk to erase. Isn't it a bit dangerous for a quirkless kid to be out this late? Robin asks, climbing up beside Eraserhead. 𝐬𝐸 shakes his head. Nah, it's early. Most crimes around here don't start until at least 4:30. Eraser let him go, sighing and rubbing his forehead. No, kid, as in what are you doing out, considering you know damn well what time it is? Oh, I'm gonna go to my usual training spot. 𝐬𝐸 shrugs, smiling at the two heroes. I'm trying to get into UA. Robin frowns. I'm sorry. Pause. He holds up his hand. You said you were quirkless, and yet you're trying to be a hero. The way he says it, the judgmental tone seeping through 𝐬𝐸's bones makes 𝐬𝐸's stomach twist. Even underground heroes didn't think he could do it, even though they fought mostly quirkless. Yeah, 𝐬𝐸 rolls his eyes, lacing his words with hatred as Robin goes to continue. Don't bother fucking saying it. 𝐬𝐸 turns and takes off, leaving the two now silent pros behind him. 𝐬𝐸 lands on the sand at the beach in a roll, allowing all his anger to be directed at any rubbish that happened to be in his path. He sighs, starting to get his setup up, even adding a new pile that was about the size of All Might that has a bucket for a head. 𝐬𝐸 wasn't just training with his staff, because he could easily lose it in a fight. 𝐬𝐸 launches himself into the air, aiming to kick the head off of the All Might and ending up hitting the chest, landing with his ass in the sand and a bruise forming on his shin. 𝐬𝐸 quickly ducked behind a corner, breathing heavily. Are those criminals? Vigilantes? Yo, Trench, how's it hanging, my dude? The girl says, excitement in her tone, though her voice is hushed. Things could be better, but you know, the trigger that's going around has been fucking everywhere in the past few days. Trigger? Is that what's causing the increase in villains? Yeah, dude. I heard from Eraser that they aren't any closer to finding out who's behind the villain factory or anything. The guy they caught was a bust. He didn't know anything. Villain factory? What the fuck is a villain factory? What is 𝐬𝐸 doing here? He should leave. Ugh, I wish they could let us fucking help. If the villain factory keeps pumping people full of trigger, then they might start making next level villains again. And it takes like 3 people to take one of those fuckers down. Next level villains. That one was familiar. 𝐬𝐸 rubs his temples under his visor. He needs to go. Now, while they're distracted, 𝐬𝐸 sighs quietly. Apparently, though, still too loud because the girl stops talking immediately, and 𝐬𝐸 panics slightly as footsteps start to close in from the alley. 𝐬𝐸 quickly climbs the wall, bolting as soon as he can. 𝐬𝐸, not for the first time, wondered what the hell he was doing, all the while picking up his pace and basically sprinting into the alleyway. He quickly extends his staff, hitting the huge man in the ribs, forcing him away from the kid on the ground in front of him. The man's eyes lock on 𝐬𝐸 and he swallows. His mask covers him from the nose down, but 𝐬𝐸 still finds himself forcing a smile, twisting his staff anxiously in his hand. This guy seems to have some sort of gigantification quirk, so maybe somewhere he can't fit, like that storm drain 2 blocks away. Maybe a quick game of whack-a-mole. 𝐬𝐸 whacks the guy's head once, making him scream in pain and anger, now advancing quickly. Okay, so he's big and can run faster than 𝐬𝐸 thought, but 𝐬𝐸 is still faster. 𝐬𝐸 runs a bit, just to the end of the block, then crouches down and waits for the guy, who still seems to be getting bigger, to follow down the road. 𝐬𝐸 waits until his back is turned, then jumps up, landing a hit on the guy's head, a loud, crisp sound echoing through the streets. God, this guy's got a thick skull, huh? 𝐬𝐸 jumps back from the swing, stumbling slightly over the curb. The man screams something but seems to jumble up his words into gibberish. He turns, sprinting into the alleyway nearby and hiding himself behind a dumpster, which is a bit rough on his back, which slammed against it in his haste. And he just got over his last set of bruises. 𝐬𝐸 groans, adjusting his mask. He had started wearing it 2 days ago, just because he hated getting dust and sand in his nose and mouth. He has a visor too, but he left it with his bag at the beach. 𝐬𝐸 peeks carefully over the dumpster, watching the guy now stumbling down the alleyway, seeming extremely disoriented and still growing in size. Must be that drug 𝐬𝐸 heard those vigilantes talking about. Trigger or something like that. 𝐬𝐸 curses softly. That would explain his aggression and lack of coherent speech. Good thing both these buildings are uninhabited. 𝐬𝐸 ducks back down. Okay, so a super drugged out guy, who seems to have at least a mild concussion right now, with anger issues against a 14-year-old with a pole. Great odds. 𝐬𝐸 waits a few more seconds, tossing a rock to the end of the alley and hearing the rage-induced screams of the giant. The giant doesn't even seem to glance at 𝐬𝐸's hiding spot, and 𝐬𝐸 quickly jumps up, landing another firm hit on the villain's head. 𝐬𝐸 jumps off the back of the giant, landing on the dumpster he was just hiding behind, and having to jump straight back off because the giant swung a hit aimed straight for him. 𝐬𝐸 rolls, a bit sloppily because of his exhaustion, and climbs up the side of the building, avoiding getting hit by the man, who is now struggling to turn around in the tight space of an alleyway. 𝐬𝐸 bends, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. God, that guy is huge and isn't slowing down. How long is the trigger supposed to last? Izuku presses the button on his staff, giving it a second to fully shrink down before tucking it into his pocket. Heroes would be here soon, and while not technically being illegal, it was still best not to get caught. Izuku jumps over the alley, starting to run back to the beach. The alley could hold him until the pros arrive, and Izuku wasn't about to wait around with an unconscious dude and then have to explain what happened to the pros. It was easier to just let them deal with the disoriented man themselves now that no one was around to get hurt. Izuku slipped down into an alleyway, cursing to himself as he sees Eraserhead running in the opposite direction, towards the giant. After another couple of seconds of waiting, Izuku climbs back up, continuing on his way. Eraser could handle it. Izuku was shaking by the time he got to the beach. How could he have done something so reckless? Yeah, he knew the basics, but he has never been in a fight before. He could have died. As long as no one else got hurt, it was okay, right? Is that how hero work works? Izuku shook his head, grabbing his bag, taking off his mask and shoving it in there. He'd figure it out tomorrow. As of right now, the adrenaline from that fight is wearing off and he wanted nothing more than to sleep for a million years as soon as he got home. Izuku tried to avoid going past the alleyway or street he took the giant down, hoping to avoid the heroes that he would have brought. Unfortunately, Izuku had less awareness now than he did earlier and almost didn't see Eraserhead until he was only one rooftop away. Izuku stopped, just one moment of hesitation, before dividing that an alternate route would take too long and he was already exhausted. So, Izuku kept going, trying to just get home. Eraser looked up at him when he landed on the roof, tilting his head. "You do this often, kid?" Izuku froze, turning to look at Eraser with his own head tilted. "Parker." "Yeah, like pretty much every night. Why? Or did you mean like running into you?" "'Cause I've only ever done that twice and I kinda didn't mean to." "Kid, relax. Just be careful. There's a lot of villains around here and I don't want you getting hurt." "Oh, like Trigger and stuff." Izuku rubs the back of his neck. Eraser's eyes narrow. "Where did you hear that term?" "I overheard a few vigilantes talking about it once." Izuku shrugs, though. "Sneaking around those guys is harder than I thought it would have been, considering most of them aren't like trained or anything." "Ew, why are you out right now? Don't you go to school or something?" "How old are you?" "Oh, I can't sleep, so it's really just spare time. And I'm 14, not that it's really any of your business." A 14-year-old who happens to snoop on a bunch of vigilantes in his spare time when he should be sleeping. Eraser deadpans. "Huh, that does sound fake," Izuku huffs. "But anyway, I gotta get home, to sleep, maybe." "Careful, there are vigilantes out tonight, and you're not exactly sneaky right now, kid." Izuku jumps at the voice behind him, spinning around. It's one of the vigilantes he accidentally spied on the other day. He seems a bit younger, now that Izuku doesn't have to be sneaky about it. 19 or so, in a hoodie similar to Izuku's, except in deep red color with armor padding on the elbows and shoulders. What was his name again? Hi. Izuku frowns slightly. "I'm not trying to be sneaky right now. Leave him alone." Trench. Earth manipulation. Like creating ditches in the ground to make his opponents lose their footing and take down is a bit easier like that. Does he have the ability to control the dirt and cement more finely, like Pixie Bob from the WWP? "Come on, Eraser, you have to admit this kid turning up out of nowhere, spying on me and my friends, somehow knowing you're here. It's all a bit sus." Eraser sighs deeply. "Yeah, but you don't have any proof that he's involved in anything illegal. I mean, you could always detain him and call the police to find out." Izuku rolls his eyes. "Yaha, because me running around and accidentally overhearing conversations in the middle of the night is enough to arrest me. But you outright being a vigilante isn't." Trench hides his face a bit more in his hood. "I mean, when you put it like that, I guess, maybe it's a bit silly." Izuku and Eraser snort at the same time. "But seriously, kid, stay out of it. This is dangerous stuff, and you aren't even in high school yet. So, it's not like I could be a vigilante, even if I wanted to." Izuku walks towards the edge of the roof, sitting next to Eraser. Trench frowns, sitting himself. "Kid, if you want to be a vigilante, all you need to do is fight some villains without a license." "No, vigilantes are people who use their quirks to fight villains without a license." Izuku glances at Eraser, who sighs in an "I can already feel the stress of dealing with this kid" kind of way. "So, what? You're just not gonna use your quirk of something?" Trench frowns, tilting his head. "Something like that." Izuku rolls his eyes. "Anyway, I really should get home. See you later." He stands up, glancing at Eraser and Trench one more time before he heads home. Izuku was getting used to the weird silence from Katsuki. Katsuki had barely spoken to him for the past 2 months. Or well, month and a half. He rarely picked on him anymore. And there was this weird energy. Izuku didn't know what to do. He still had problems at school, of course. The other kids weren't going any easier on him. But instead of burns from Katsuki's explosions, it was bigger bruises and more swirlies. Well, without the toilet. Besides, Izuku was getting better at avoiding everyone and anyone as well. After school, he went home, changed, and then usually went to the beach to train for 2 hours before going home. His sleep cycle wasn't anywhere near normal, but he got around 5 hours of sleep before he would usually get nightmares. And sometimes he even got an extra 2 or 3 hours before school as well, if he was tired enough from the 3 a.m. exercise. But the weirdest thing, to 𝐬𝐻𝐸 at least, was the muscle gain. He knew that it would happen, but it was a lot. Like, he might need to go up a size in uniform in the next month if things kept going the way they were going. It hurt to move this much at first, but now he could do pretty much everything he once struggled with now with ease. He was tempted to start learning new tricks with his staff, now that he didn't think he was gonna die if he tried. He was also now thinking a bit more thoroughly about the alterations he wanted to make on his staff, now that he had been in a sort of fight. Also, some sort of shield or something would be good. There was this support workshop starting soon. Though, it was more for teens who wanted to actually be in the support gear industry, but 𝐬𝐻𝐸 wanted to make his things better. Mainly because if he was gonna go out fighting crimes, he couldn't use a support item made by anyone except himself or his family. Well, legally, he couldn't, and he wasn't going to give them any excuses to arrest him. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 looks at the flyer one more time, then up at the building in front of him, sighing. This is the place. It honestly just looks like an old, run-down barn. However, this was, supposedly, a support company's main building, where they run serval safety and design courses for students who want to get into a support course. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 really wasn't aiming for support, but he was interested in upgrading his staff. Maybe some electricity. He also wanted to add in compressed air, to launch himself higher into the air when he extends it against the ground, or to pack a hard hit against a villain. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 walked to the door, banging on it twice with his fist. Hopefully, the address was right on the flyer. He sucks in a breath as the door is opened from the inside. A tall, pink-haired woman is standing there, smiling down at 𝐬𝐻𝐸. "Heya, sweetheart. You're here for the workshop, yeah?" 𝐬𝐻𝐸 chuckles awkwardly. Yeah. Are you 𝐬𝐻𝐸? Well, yeah, and my daughter May. She's also running it with me. So, just call me ma'am and you can call me miss, alright." The woman turns, starting to walk into the building. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 hesitates, then follows, closing the door behind himself. "May, there's someone new joining our workshop today. Could you please run over the basics of being in a lab with him while I start with everyone else?" 𝐬𝐻𝐸 is a girl around 𝐬𝐻𝐸's age, with pink hair that's similar to her mother's, but instead of having it hang freely at waist length, May has hers in box braids at shoulder length. She steps right in front of 𝐬𝐻𝐸, smiling widely. "Hello, Freckles. It's nice to meet you." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 steps back slightly due to the sheer energy radiating from the girl in front of him. My name is Midoriya, miss," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 corrects, frowning slightly as May steps forward again. "That's great. I'm May 𝐻𝐸, future CEO of 𝐻𝐸 Industries." She introduces, grabbing 𝐬𝐻𝐸's arm and dragging him over to a desk. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 realizes that there probably isn't much point in arguing with the girl as she sits him in a chair. In front of him is a workbench, which has a bunch of tools over it and an empty space in the center. "Right. So do you have anything you want to work on?" Yeah, actually. But, aren't you meant to teach me some lab safety stuff first?" 𝐬𝐻𝐸 tries hard not to stutter as he looks at the girl, who he now realizes has a streak of grease on her cheek, not to mention all over her singlet and pants. After a quick briefing on the safety rules, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 pulls out his staff, sitting it on the table. What does it do?" May asks, picking it up. Well, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 takes it from her. "It does this." He presses the button on the staff, allowing May to see how it extends out. "But I want it to do more. I want to install a metal rim, which would allow for a taser-like effect when charged with electricity, and I also want it to extend faster, with enough pressure to launch someone 5 or so meters into the air." "Wow, that sounds incredible." May starts to pull some tools out of the box, and then runs off to get the cart of parts from where it was left next to another table. "So, we're gonna need a battery, some wire and an air compressor." "Oh, this is gonna be so much fun." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 grins at the girl's energy, which appears to be contagious. "Yeah, you sure you want to help me, though? Doesn't your mum need help running the class?" "Oh, no. She can run it fine on her own but just can't keep me out of the lab." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 glances at her mother, who smiles apologetically. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 shrugs, grinning as he turns back to May. "Well, I'm glad she did because I'm happy to have you teach me, May." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 chirps, bouncing slightly in his excitement. May does the same. "You used my first name. That means we're friends now, right?" May hugs 𝐬𝐻𝐸 quickly, still bouncing on the spot. "Yep, my first name is 𝐬𝐻𝐸 if you want to call me that," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 says as he is sat down. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 wondered, as he wiped some grease off his forehead, if May's mother was concerned about the two of them, who had spent the full day together, working on various projects. They finished 𝐬𝐻𝐸's staff a while ago, and 𝐬𝐻𝐸 invited her to come to test it out with him later. She said that she had a few more projects she wanted to test and fine-tune. A few. They hadn't tested any of them yet, because 𝐬𝐡𝐢 kept saying things that made them both too excited to test the project half done. However, with late afternoon approaching, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 and 𝐚ei left the workshop and headed for the beach. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 led 𝐚ei to his usual testing spot, where he extended his staff, now with 3 extension settings and a button for a small electric current. The first thing 𝐬𝐡𝐢 tests is the extension, which they have used a super strong, quark-powered mini compressed air canister and a mini air compressor to create a reusable aspect to the launch. They were only about 10 centimeters in length, but 𝐬𝐡𝐢 went up into the air enough to see over some of the rubbish piles. He lands roughly, managing to roll out most of the impact but still expecting at least a bit of bruising on his arms. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 got to his feet, laughing, "Wow, 𝐚ei, did you see that? I must have gone at least 15 meters up. That was amazing. Wow, that packs more punch than I realized. Maybe I'll have to make a few more of those little babies for my other babies." 𝐚ei smiles, picking up one of her babies from the crate they brought with them. After a bit of testing, mainly done by 𝐬𝐡𝐢, who has the most experience at not dying when falling from heights, they were done. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 smiles as they both head back to the workshop. "See you next week, 𝐚ei. I'm thinking we should both come up with a few ideas for a force field shield type deal if you want to have a bit of fun making one next week." 𝐚ei lights up at her friend. "Yes, absolutely, 𝐬𝐡𝐢." She squeals slightly, already scribbling down a few ideas. "See you next week." 𝐬𝐡𝐢 leaves, feeling a sense of pride. He feels good, at the least. He made a friend and improved his staff's design to be a lot more durable and maneuverable. It provides a lot more options for dynamic movements, a lot more options for takedowns, and escape if necessary. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 smiles at his mom as he walks in, not noticing the slight amount of horror on her face as she takes in the state of his clothes, his face and his hair, all covered in grease and sand. He sits his bag in his room before she regains control over herself and calls out, "You better have a shower and change before dinner, young man." "Yeah, I got it, Mom, thanks," 𝐬𝐡𝐢 calls, already walking into the bathroom. After his shower, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 sits at the table and immediately starts talking about his day and his new friend. He still has the energy from her radiating off of him, and it makes his mother smile slightly, though he is talking so fast that she can't understand a word of it. After dinner, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 watches some TV with his mother. Hero fights. Not only one, not really old ones, but 𝐬𝐡𝐢 had started falling behind a little bit since his new workout routine began. So for about 2 months now, he spends at least an hour just rambling about all the heroes, strong points and weaknesses in both fighting and rescue. After this, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 retreats to his room, lurking in some underground hero online spaces for a while until he saw a post. 3R453 posted, 7:42 p.m. Today, can a quirkless person really not be classed as a vigilante? Hey, everyone, I've been thinking about this a lot because there is a kid I've seen a few times in the middle of my usual nighttime patrols, and he seems to think that he couldn't be a vigilante. Is there any way to convince him to wait until high school for internships or something? He seems a bit nervous around people, especially about his quirklessness, but he would make a good hero if he didn't go about it illegally. Oh God, it's Eraserhead. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 laughs to himself. Time to be known, he guessed. This is the first time he's ever posted, and oh God, the name he chose just got better. Eraserhead's kid posted, 7:56 p.m. Today, hi, at 3R453R. The answers are no. You cannot convince me to wait until school, and no, a quirkless person cannot be a vigilante legally speaking. I'm not breaking any laws. Consider this a threat. If I make the support item, it is not illegal for me to use it in self-defense. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 didn't know why he wrote "consider this a threat," but he knew just how much it would piss off Eraser, not to mention make him even more worried. He was posting about him, 𝐬𝐡𝐢, not some worthless quirkless kid, but a kid he was supposedly concerned about. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 scrolls through a few of the other comments, mostly about just talking about the issue to the kid, and then a few saying to find his parents and let them know what's been going on. A few say that they doubt the kid is quirkless and how the next generation should all theoretically have quirks, and strong ones at that. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 just rolls his eyes as he scrolls past them. Then his comment gets a reply. 3R453 posted, 7:59 p.m. Today at Eraserhead's kid. God damn it, kid. I just want to help you. Why do you even want to be a vigilante anyway? What brought this on? Eraserhead's kid posted, 8:05 p.m. Today at 3R453. I don't want to be a vigilante. I want to be a hero. And I guess I just got sick of everyone saying I couldn't. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 sighs, rubbing his eyes. It took him 6 minutes to think of a goddamn reply to that. He just wanted to keep people safe. Except himself, obviously. 3R453 posted, 8:06 p.m. Today. At Eraserhead's kid. We can sort this out, kid. Meet me in person tonight. Okay. You'll be a hero someday. Oh God. Eraser thinks he can be a hero. Had 𝐬𝐡𝐢 tricked him, somehow? Eraser was the first and probably one of the only people who had ever said that. A few more comments trickled through Izuku's notifications. Laugher posted, 8:25 p.m. today at Eraserhead's kid. Oh my god, you saw a post about yourself and you just thought, oh, well, better make everyone more nervous, huh, kid? I'm robbing you. Posted, 8:27 p.m. today at Eraserhead's kid. Why do I get the feeling you're about to cause too much trouble for your own good? 𝐴𝐡𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐧𝐝. Posted, 8:47 p.m. today at Eraserhead's kid. Are you fucking kidding me right now? You're the kid that he's been talking about for weeks now. You were here the whole time. 𝐬𝐴𝐬 posted, 8:55 p.m. today at Eraserhead's kid. Fighting crime is dangerous if you're not trained. Please wait until you are in a hero training course before taking any kind of action. Izuku could only blink when he checked his notifications. He was about to head to bed, but now he sat, staring at his computer screen. 𝐴𝐡𝐢𝐬's comment stuck to him the most. He was concerned about him. They didn't know each other. Hell, Izuku didn't even know he used this site. Also, finding out it's 𝐴𝐡𝐢𝐬 would have taken forever if Izuku wasn't the fanboy he was. 𝐴𝐡𝐢𝐬's first debut. The first line he ever said on camera was, "The security man let me by, I'm 𝐴𝐡𝐢𝐬." Izuku sighed, closing the browser and climbing into bed. He was gonna see Eraser later, it was fine. Probably. Izuku was a bit nervous, sitting with his mask around his neck and goggles resting on the top of his head. Under his hood, he knew Eraser's patrol loosely, but he wasn't sure if he was right about it yet. His anxiety nearly made him want to run away completely, but he decided to just pull out his notebook and read over the info he had on Eraser and the possibly exploitable weakness if things went south, for whatever reason. Mainly, Eraser probably wasn't used to fighters being used to quirkless combat, and Izuku could run pretty fast. Izuku glanced over his shoulder after hearing a noise. See Eraser jump onto the rooftop next to him. He pulls up one of his legs, turning his body to watch Eraser arrive. When he does, Eraser pulls down his goggles, looking at Izuku and sighing slightly. You look like a vigilante with that thing. Eraser gestures to the mask around Izuku's neck. Yeah, but dust is annoying, so I'll keep it, thanks. Izuku moves over slightly, allowing Eraser to sit next to him. So, what's this about support items, problem child? Eraser frowns, observing Izuku in full. Oh, I have a few ideas, but I made this. He pulls out his staff. It works a bit like a taser when it's turned on, and he extends it to the second length setting with a small poof, pops out. Izuku shrinks it back down, tucking it back in his pocket. Are you any good with it? Eraser asks, rolling his eyes. I've practiced a bit, but I've never fought anyone with it, so I'm not sure. Izuku looks at some of the city lights, which are neon lights on the weekends due to increased bar traffic. Aren't there classes or something you could take? Self-defense courses look good of hero course applications. Eraser follows his gaze, then looks back at Izuku, who shrugs. As illegal as it might be, they don't let quirkless people take those classes. I was lucky enough to do support item workshops. Izuku rolls his eyes. Not that it wasn't fun. It's just not the kind of helping I want to do, I do know. But that's also why proper training is important. Just running and unprepared puts more people in danger. You think I don't know that? Izuku snaps, turning his head with enough force to give himself whiplash to glare at Eraser, who flinches at the outburst. It's better than sitting by and letting someone die. Izuku turns away, rubbing his neck. Ouch, kid, Eraser sighs. I'm just trying to say, I get it. I'm just going to cause more fucking problems, like always. Izuku rolls his eyes again, turning to Eraser. No, I'm saying you need more practice. Not. Eraser moves his hand, going to rest it on Izuku's shoulder, a concerned expression on his face. You called me a problem child earlier, Eraser. Izuku moves his shoulder. I'm clearly not helping. I haven't even done anything yet. Kid, do you want training or not? Eraser grips Izuku's arm and hauls him to his feet. What? Izuku cringes at the way his voice cracks. Training. Yes, training. Eraser starts to drag Izuku off. Come on, I have another hour before I'm officially on patrol. We might as well see what you can do. Izuku was so stunned he couldn't respond, just follows as Eraser led him through the streets. Eraser was going to teach him. Izuku didn't know exactly what he was expecting when he said he'd meet with Eraser, but it wasn't this. Izuku eventually gets his arm back, allowing him a second to pull up his mask and pull his goggles down. Eraser could only sigh when he sees it, continuing to lead Izuku to the back of some sort of community center. Ms. Joke, in her brightly colored striped shorts, is standing there, eyes glancing around as if looking for something. He smiles brightly as she sees Eraser and Izuku approaching. Hiya, kid. Wow, you're a lot shorter than I thought you'd be. Izuku just shrugs. There wasn't anything to say to that. He was short. Joke laughs. Not much for talking, huh? Eraser sighs, rolling his eyes. He just does know how to handle your personality. Yet, Joke, then what's your excuse, Eraser? She muses, grinning slightly. Izuku snorts, shaking his head slightly while Eraser glares at Joke, though playfully. See, I knew he had a sense of humor. You sure you want me around while you're trying to teach him? considering you have the keys to the gym I want to use. Yeah, I'm sure. Eraser extends his hand for the keys, which Joke holds up and goes to set them in his hand before changing direction and tossing the keys at Izuku's head. Izuku catches them, blinking slightly and handing the keys to Eraser. He's got good relaxes, I'll give you that. What about this one made you want to take him on anyway? What's his quirk? I bet it's some kind of speed or intelligence, right? Joke walks with the two of them while Eraser unlocks the door to the gym, opening it up fully. I joke, did you even read the post I made? Eraser frowns, shaking his head, don't. Joke freezes. Oh shit, I completely forgot about that. Sorry kid. Hey, I'm used to it. Izuku responds, sitting his bag down by the door, glancing over at Eraser, who pulls out a few staffs from a chest of training weapons. Kid, how long is your staff fully extended? Eraser asks, pulling out a variety of sizes, laying them on the floor. 1.5 meters, Izuku responds, looking at the full gym, including the gymnastic setups. They do classes here? Yeah. Joke nods. Yep, mostly run by a couple of old pros, from before the Olympics stopped running. She looks at the equipment. I hear they're real hard asses about who they let in. Izuku snorts. Yeah, I bet. He applied once when he was younger. They didn't run boy classes for his age bracket, so he was told to wait. Eraser stands, holding a staff in each hand. All right, kid, let's see what you got. He tosses a staff to Izuku, who breathes out through his nose when he catches it. One spar later, and Izuku gasps slightly when he is slammed into the ground by Eraser. They'd been sparring for a while, neither being able to get the upper hand until Izuku slips slightly on the mat, allowing Eraser to grip him by the hood and flip him onto his back. Izuku grabs the staff that Eraser has pressed to his chest, using it to pull himself to his feet. Joke whistles slightly, giggling softly. Wow, Eraser, you really went hard on our son. Both Izuku and Eraser go red, though only Eraser's is visible. He's not our son, Joke. Eraser responds, shaking his head, and he held his own. He might need to replace his shoes, though, if slipping like that is going to be a problem. Izuku rolls his eyes, pulls down his mask and drinks some water, whipping under his mouth with the back of his hand afterwards, blinking at Joke, who is staring at him. What? You have freckles, she observes, blinking dumbly. I didn't expect that. You know, not as many people have freckles because it became kind of a recessive gene when quirks came around and stuff. Oh, yeah, Izuku touches his cheeks, shrugging. I try not to think about it too much. It's nothing to be ashamed of, though. I mean, I know people who have quirks with freckles. It just... Joke pauses, sighing as she realizes she can't talk herself out of the hole she just dug. It's fine, Izuku assures, grabbing his pole again and pulling up his mask. He would prefer the trash pit right now, but he isn't getting enough combat experience from that, so he's staying. Eraser just grins, extending his staff to Joke. Your turn. Fighting while laughing is extremely difficult, it turns out, though. Izuku started to use it to his advantage, echoing his laugh around Joke while leading her on a chase through one of the obstacle courses, which doubles as a maze. This is in a different room in the community center, and it was actually Eraser's idea after listening to Izuku explaining the ways he would counter Quirk's jokes in a real fight. Lead her inside, preferably one of those echo rooms or, like, a hall of mirrors, even just apartment buildings where the walls are thin enough to hear through. Izuku was also using his size to his advantage, using the space between the walls of the maze and the ceiling to confuse Joke further and sneak around. Eventually, he jumps down behind her, quickly managing to disarm her and lock on the quirk suppressant cuffs they were using as capture indicators. He sits against the wall, trying to catch his breath while looking at Joke, who starts laughing and giggling as she stands up and helps Izuku out of the maze. Eraser is standing at the entrance, arms crossed as he looks at the two of them, eyeing the cuffs on Joke before nodding and undoing them. After another water break, Izuku sits down and pulls out his notebook, quickly writing everything he has learned, and adding in a few extra thoughts about Joke's quirk, or how people with smaller size-based quirks could use vent or other systems to sneak up on him, and he needs to train his ears to hear someone approaching that way. After a few pages, he sets his notebook to the side and checks the time. Eraser nods, indicating that it has been a full hour. All right, Joke, I've got a patrol to do right now. Do you think you could handle this one for another few hours? Maybe some gymnastics basics or something? Joke nods, grinning and taunting. Oh, this will be fun. Izuku sighs, gently rubbing his hands where they're already starting to blister from pulling himself up on the walls repeatedly. Izuku collapses onto his bed when he arrives home, stiff and sore from training and finally tired enough to sleep. He wakes to his alarm, sighing to himself, why did he keep his alarm on during the weekends? Izuku dismisses it, laying face down for a second before he gets up and heads to the bathroom. After carefully stripping and showering, Izuku gently massages his muscles, wincing slightly in the painful spots. Why did he want to do this again? He groans but glances at the large burn scar on his chest. It's pretty much faded, but the memories are fresh in Izuku's brain. It was about a week after Katsuki got his quirk, and they were both playing around in the backyard of the Bakugo's household when Katsuki decided to playfully activate his quirk, and he had been sweating a bit more than he thought. Izuku got too close, and basically was lucky he wasn't any shorter at the time or it would have been his face. Izuku shoves the thoughts from his mind, focusing on getting dressed before his mind wandered to Mei, and the shield designs he needed to come up with. He grinned slightly and quickly went back to his room, pulling out his design paper and scribbling out a few sketches. Mei and Izuku are in their corner of the lab, grinning widely at one another. Between them is well over 20 designs for a shield, most of which get crazier and crazier, bigger with more features as the pile goes on. Izuku was measured, and they both decided to go with a shield at least around 60 centimeters in diameter, which is around big enough for Izuku to tuck himself into a ball behind, but small enough to not be a hindrance in a fight. Hopefully, it's just a prototype. He needed defense desperately before he hit the street, as proven even more so by his training with Joke and Eraser, which now happened 3 times a week, Monday and Wednesday. They worked through a few of the ideas, settling with a retractable design that had by a similar type of electric circuit to Izuku's staff, and was made out of metal to be more conductive. They were also interested in propelling items away or at least blocking things like bullets or blasts of fire from further away than the actual shield, like a force field. If they did manage to get a working force field, it would revolutionize the support industry and most definitely give Mei a boost in the up-and-coming support inventors. At this point, the retractable shield was easier though, so that's what they worked on. They attached it to the gloves Izuku had spent the last week making out of tough leather-like material, in a deep green that matches his hair. Izuku also brought some of the spare leather to help seal in the design when they were happy with it. The end results of the glove looks almost the same, except for the slight bulging out of a metal button, and the button that should launch the shield out that is attached to his palm. There are also a few pockets added. The glove is elbow length, so they decided to add a few extra batteries to the shield so it could go for longer than his staff. In a few of the pockets are mini grenades, mini flashbangs, and other mini explosives or some other. They were all about 5 by 2 centimeters, differentiating from the usual grenade shape in exchange for being smaller and easier to carry. Luckily, Mei was crazy enough in her own right to suggest the explosives, rather than Izuku having to convince her. They designed, produced, and even tested all the mini designs, and were both ecstatic with the results. Izuku was tempted to stay longer, and Mei's mum even offered for him to spend the night. When Izuku declined, because he had training, she insisted he at least stay for dinner, and Izuku was also cornered by Mei until he agreed. Dinner was, in a word, chaotic. Turns out, Mei's older brother was just as crazy about his explosives, but in more of a prankster way than Mei, as he put Mei and Izuku's mini design underneath his father's seat. Mei and her brother laughed, and they laughed harder when their mothers started yelling. Izuku didn't know how to react. Sure, he had been in a loud household before, but the Bakugos were more an angry loud, not a happy loud like this. Izuku couldn't get enough of it. The energy around this family was everything he ever wanted from his own family, or even just if he had friends before Mei. This was exactly what he liked. He wasn't expected to be loud with them, he was allowed to just be there. Instead of saying anything, he reserved himself to watch and chuckle under his breath while stories were told, food was devoured, and somehow more explosions went off. Izuku let Mei and her brother walk him to the train station, and they both told him the story of the first time that Mei had ever made an explosion in the workshop. So, anyway, Dad leaves, because obviously, Mei knew what she was doing and was a fairly innocent 6-year-old. But I had figured out how to combine just the right amount of electricity and boom. The crazy little gremlin didn't have eyebrows for weeks after. Dad was so angry. He might as well have been another explosion himself when he came back to me standing there, covered head to toe in soot, not to mention half his projects at the time. They both laugh, and Izuku chuckles, shaking his head. So, anyway, short stuff, tell us something about you. You're way quieter than Mei's usual buddies, Mei's brother says, gently nudging Izuku to get a response. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just a habit. Izuku awkwardly rubs the back of his head. I guess, what do you want to know about me? What's your quirk? I know you want to be a hero or whatever, but you've never said. Izuku almost shut down, but instead just shrugs. I don't have one, hence why I'm getting into support gear so early. That's smart, especially with Mei here trying to get into UA as well. Maybe you can take the items you guys have made to show them off in the exam or something. Give her a boost for you to get a boost. Izuku nods. Yeah, because the field of support items are so heavily regulated, I'd have to put her as the co-creator anyway, so her name will get out there soon. He frowns, looking at Izuku. Soon? Isn't it like 6 months to the exam? 5.5. But if the cops show up, Mei, you know nothing, Izuku says. Then he laughs at the look on her brother's face. Relax, I'm joking, though, really, he wasn't. The train arrives, and Izuku goes to step on before Mei's brother grabs his arm. Whatever, just to go out doing vigilante bullshit that could get Mei in trouble, all right. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 flashes him a shit-eating grin as he gets on the train. Sure. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 sees the split second of panic before the door to the train close and he is on his way home. He is practically vibrating with excitement. And at least that little bit of chaos was good for his soul. But that's nothing to the chaos he would be causing later by showing up with mini grenades to his training session. Not to mention the shield, but that's less chaos and more common sense. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 fiddles with the sleeve of his hoodie again. Glad that the night is warm enough that his upper arms aren't too cold, but kind of wishing he could have kept the sleeves. But functionality over fashion. A shield would protect him more than sleeves would. And he can't active his shield with sleeves on. It didn't help when 𝐬𝐴Rcer gave him a judgmental look when they met outside the community center. What are you wearing? Oh, my hoodie. Where'd the sleeves go? And why? The sleeves were cut off because they were misbehaving. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 jokes, rolling his eyes, but seriously, you'll find out. Whoa, what's this? I see my style has rubbed off on you. Joke jokes as they walk in, and 𝐬𝐡𝐢 grins, rolling his eyes. Sure, yeah, that's it. Oh, you have more support gear, don't you? 𝐬𝐴Rcer asks, head in his hands, just once. Once I would like the train without having to relax, 𝐬𝐴Rcer. What you got for us this time, kid? Joke asks, smiling at 𝐬𝐡𝐢. Oh, I have a bunch of things. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 grins, watching as 𝐬𝐴Rcer dies inside. I have grenades. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 starts, only to be immediately cut off. You have what? Where did you even get grenades? More importantly, where are they? I made them. 𝐬𝐴Rcer, relax. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 pops open a pouch on his gloves, taking out one of the grenades. They pack a punch for something so small, but they are not for indoor use. They set one off inside, as part of the testing process, and it's a grenade, and let's just say that the workshop has one less wall than it did earlier. Anyway, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 puts it back. We also made flashbangs, discombobulators, and next week we're working on a gas compression chamber so we can make mini gas bombs. 𝐬𝐴Rcer groans. Well, that's not too bad, but it doesn't explain why you cut your sleeves off. Oh, right. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 presses the button on his left glove, watching the shield spring out, solidifying and making a faint buzzing of electricity. I made a shield. He informs, pressing the button again and having the shield retract completely back into his glove. 𝐬𝐴Rcer sighs as if he is trying to expel his soul from his body, and Joke starts laughing, giving 𝐬𝐡𝐢 a firm pat on the back. Good job, kid. I'm glad you're thinking ahead about protecting yourself against attacks. Turns out, having a shield really helps with not being as sore after training sessions, probably because he barely got hit at all. Of course, there were a few times when he wasn't fast enough because he was fighting both the pros at the same time, but 𝐬𝐡𝐢 wasn't complaining. That was realistic. Fighting wasn't going to be fair against villains. He didn't have a quirk like 𝐬𝐴Rcer's where he could remove others' quirks out of the equation. He needed to work hard than other heroes, who had quirks like could help them fight. He was already working hard to be a hero than basically all of his classmates, mind you. He was working out, training with 𝐬𝐴Rcer and Joke, though he now feels they're only doing it so he doesn't go out and fight villains yet. He is going to take advantage of the training they help provide. He felt good, almost proud of the amount of progress he was making, though his muscles almost never got a break. And he was starting to get a lot hungrier at night. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 feels his cheeks heat up as his stomach growls and 𝐬𝐴Rcer looks at him with a raised eyebrow. OneAMYak, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 says, finishing putting away his training staff before he makes a beeline for the door. 𝐬𝐴Rcer stops him with his capture weapon. Kid. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 flinches slightly, turning around, and 𝐬𝐴Rcer sighs. Come on, I'll buy you something to eat. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 frown. You really don't have to do that. I've got money and stuff, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 says, though he is already following 𝐬𝐴Rcer. 𝐬𝐴Rcer just shrugs. I'd feel better if I know you've eaten before I send you home. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 nods, and 𝐬𝐴Rcer starts his way over the rooftops. After a couple of blocks, 𝐬𝐴Rcer drops down into an alleyway, and 𝐬𝐡𝐢 follows him. They're next to a diner, the kind that is open 24/7. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 looks at 𝐬𝐴Rcer, who walks in while grabbing 𝐬𝐡𝐢's hood to drag him behind him. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 doesn't protest, but he does wriggle his hood out of 𝐬𝐴Rcer's grip. I still can't believe you made grenades, 𝐬𝐴Rcer mutters while 𝐬𝐡𝐢 eats across from him, now grinning slightly. Yeah, it wasn't really my idea, but they were fun to design and make. My co-creator, her quirk is super useful for small designs, cause she can zoom in, makes her eyes dilate and everything, kind of like Snipe, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 informs, continuing to eat. You seem to know a lot about heroes, 𝐬𝐴Rcer says, frowning slightly. How many heroes do you actually know of? 𝐬𝐡𝐢 shrugs, at least the top 100 or so, not to mention a few underground heroes. It's kind of the only industry where quirk usage is free reign and quirks are really interesting. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 cuts himself off by asking a question. How do you activate your quirk? By the way, cause I know you don't just have to look at someone. Is it, like, creating an energy field that targets the energy that's related to quirk activation or something? 𝐬𝐴Rcer blinks. I don't know the specifics, but that seems about right. Wow, no wonder 𝐬𝐴Rcer is such a wet blanket. That's just how his quirk works within his personality. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 feels himself getting more excited. Wow, that's so cool. You know, you could probably mimic that if you create the right energy frequency. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 slaps his table slightly. He didn't need a force field, but an energy shield like that would be useful, effectively leveling the playing field. He pulls out his notebook, already frantically writing out his idea before he looks back to Eraser, who seems stunned. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 is practically bouncing out of his skin at this point. How much can you tell me about your quirk? 𝐻𝐡𝐬 jumps down, landing behind Eraser and already deploying his shield to block the hit that would have hit Eraser to the ground. How 𝐻𝐡𝐬 found him was beyond him. But Eraser was rarely late to their training sessions, so 𝐻𝐡𝐬 and 𝐬𝐿 decided to go looking for him. It only took about 10 minutes, and 𝐻𝐡𝐬 knew he didn't have to hold out with Eraser for too long before he missed check-in and 𝐬𝐿 would come over this way to help. It would probably be less than 10 minutes, though at least 2 of the 3 guys are on trigger, judging by the uncontrollable rage they seem to have. The one 𝐻𝐡𝐬 blocked starts spasming and drops to the floor while 𝐻𝐡𝐬 looks up to see a 4th guy he didn't see before running at him. Great. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 extended his staff to its half length, adjusting his stance before the guy was in front of him, a right hook coming in strong for 𝐻𝐡𝐬's face. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 pulls his shield up, already swinging for the guy's legs with his pole, wincing as the guy lets out a yell and collapses to the ground. He spins to Eraser, who was just slammed into the ground by the only guy still standing, the other being already knocked unconscious. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 adjusts his grip, steals his nerves and runs toward him, dodging underneath the first swing, jumping up and hitting the guy in the head with his staff, then quickly jumping back and landing near Eraser, who doesn't seem conscious. Eraser, are you okay? 𝐻𝐡𝐬 yells, already dodging the next hit from the trigger-possessed dude. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 curses when Eraser doesn't respond. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 definitely didn't have enough training for this. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 swings, and the guy dodges backwards. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 lunges, trying to close the distance before the guy could recover. They exchanged a few attempted hits like this before 𝐻𝐡𝐬 finally managed to land a hit on the guy, effectively using both his shield and staff to electrocute him before he runs over to Eraser, kneeling down and checking his pulse and breathing. Okay, he's breathing. What's next? 𝐻𝐡𝐬 pulls Eraser's comm out of his ear and puts it into his own, tapping it to open the link to 𝐬𝐿. 𝐬𝐿, I found Eraser, but he is unconscious. He is breathing though, so maybe come help, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 says. Then he gives her his location. Great job, kid. Are the people who hurt him still around? 𝐬𝐿 asks, slightly panting. I mean, they are, but they definitely aren't conscious either. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 gently moves Eraser, checking his head for any lacerations. And I take it you did that. A male's voice says through the comms, almost sounding amused. Yeah, who are you? Sorry. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 crouches next to Eraser, keeping an eye out for any other movement. I'm Detective 𝐀𝐦. I'm usually Eraser's first contact when he's on patrol. I'm also on my way. I want to meet this vigilante who supposedly knows both Eraser and Ms. 𝐬𝐿. He does know us, 𝐀𝐦. This is the kid we've been training. You said he wouldn't go vigilante if he was training. I'm not a vigilante, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 pouts. Besides, Eraser didn't show up to training today. Right, kid, stay where you are, 𝐀𝐦 says, clearly rolling his eyes. I am going to. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 puts his shield away and shrinks his staff too, putting his staff in his pocket and adjusting his mask. What, you aren't scared of getting arrested? Nope, I don't think my mom would be very happy about it, but Eraser's safety is more important. Besides, you guys wouldn't be able to hold me for more than, 2 hours at this point? 𝐻𝐡𝐬 checks the time. Yeah, I have school this morning, so. 𝐀𝐦 sighs. I see why Eraser talks about you the way he does. He talks about me. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 squeaks, hiding in his hoodie slightly. Eraser talks about him. To a detective. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 can faintly hear sirens in the background, and he focuses his eyes on Eraser, who is still breathing but not conscious. Hey, kid, relax, okay? We're just around the corner. I'm here, 𝐬𝐿 says, landing beside 𝐻𝐡𝐬, who jumps slightly. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 takes out Eraser's comm link and hands it to 𝐬𝐿, who smiles at 𝐻𝐡𝐬. You did a good job, kid. Thanks. Do you think I should actually go or should I just stay? 𝐻𝐡𝐬 nervously folds his hands over themselves a few times, looking up at 𝐬𝐿. 𝐬𝐿 shrugs. I mean, they'll probably catch you at some point, and legally their hands are tied. True, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 mumbles, crouching down with his back against the wall. I guess I might as well get this over with. Only a few seconds later, a police car and an ambulance pull up. The first responders immediately checking over the injuries and either deciding they are stable enough to be arrested or not stable and treated. They were all stable enough to be arrested, and a few even became conscious while being treated, arrested. Eraser is put into the ambulance before the detective walks over to 𝐻𝐡𝐬, who hasn't pulled his mask down yet. Come on, you're under arrest for vigilantism. He sighs, pulling out his cuffs. No, try again. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 crosses his arms. What do you mean no? You can't resist arrest. I can if I haven't committed a crime. This wasn't an act of vigilantism because that requires quirk usage, and I do believe I can react out of self-defense enough to knock someone unconscious, and it's not like they have any injuries. You expect me to believe a 14-year-old did this without a quirk? 𝐲𝐿𝐬 asks, pointing to one of the unconscious men. Unless you have proof that I used a quirk or an illegal support item, you can't arrest me. Really? Do you have any support items on you? Not illegal ones. Izuku sighs as he stands next to the detective, outside of his own front door, waiting for his mother to answer. Izuku had long since taken off his goggles and mask, but his gloves and hoodie were still on. The detective seems to be fighting to keep a straight face while they wait. 𝐀𝐦 opens the door, seeing her son in what was the hoodie she bought him for his birthday, sleeves no longer attached, in torn black jeans that he never wore anymore, and gloves which seemed to have multiple pockets for things, and right next to him, in a full uniform, is a detective with short black hair and a tired look on his face. Izuku looks up at his mother and smiles nervously. Good morning, I'm Detective 𝐀𝐦, and I'm just here to drop off Mr. Midoriya after he had an incident this morning involving some villains. There won't be any charges, but Midoriya, I do not wish to have to pick you up like that again. Izuku, what happened? 𝐀𝐦 pulls her son in for a hug, before she realizes, what do you mean charges? Your son was physically involved in fighting the villains, Mrs. Midoriya, 𝐲𝐿𝐬 informs, shooting Izuku a look before returning to look at his mother. Izuku flinches when his mother says his name. Izuku, I can't believe you. I thought I told you last time to just let the pro heroes handle it. It's their job, Izuku, not yours. Whoever you were saving could have waited if you just called the police. What do you mean last time? 𝐲𝐿𝐬 asks, holding up his hand to cut in. There was an incident, about 5 months ago now, where Izuku's friend was a hostage in an incident. Izuku decided that because All Might was just down the street that it was appropriate to run to try and help his friend, even though the pros could handle it. 𝐀𝐦 says, folding her arms while looking at Izuku. Izuku, I thought you said you wouldn't do something like that again. Izuku just shrugs. Sorry, Mum. Sorry. The police show up at my door at 3 a.m. to drop you home, and all you have to say for yourself is sorry. 𝐀𝐦 sighs. Izuku, I didn't want to have to do this, but you are grounded for the next month. All right, Mum. Izuku walks in, taking his shoes off before turning to the detective, who stares at the two of them with a small smile on his lips. Thanks for dropping me home, 𝐲𝐿𝐬. Izuku gives a big grin, in a way that says don't think you've stopped me, before he closes the door. Izuku turns back to his mum. Mum, I couldn't just do nothing. He needed my help. Izuku, I still haven't been told what you were even doing out at this time. I couldn't sleep, and lately I've been going on runs and stuff like that. It helps me fall asleep again. Izuku rubs the back of his head. I've been having bad nightmares, and I feel bad to wake you up when I can't sleep, so. Izuku rests his hand on the back of his neck. I've been going out. 𝐀𝐦's eyes soften. Izuku, baby, you can talk to me about these things. If not me, then maybe a therapist. I know that was a bust last time, but I think it's a bit more important this time, you know. I'll even pull you out of school early once a week so that you make it to the appointments on time. Izuku nods. All right, I'll try seeing someone. Good. Now, I don't think either of us is going to get back to sleep anytime soon, so do you maybe want to give me a hand with breakfast, and then we can both get ready for the day? Well, actually, I think I'll have a shower because I smell pretty bad. Izuku walks to his room before he heads into the bathroom. Hey, Eraser, Izuku chirps, landing behind the grumpy man, who jumps. Kid, I thought you were grounded. Eraser whispers harshly, glaring at Izuku. Oh, and you thought that would stop me? Izuku laughs slightly. Nah, Mum ungrounded me cause I agreed to see a psychologist. And, you know, tell her when I go out. She's worried, don't get me wrong, but she knows that I'm pretty stubborn. So, all I needed to do to get you some therapy was to get you arrested. Eraser chuckles slightly. Good to know. Huh, funny. I wasn't arrested, technically, though. It would suck if it affected my ability to get into a hero school or something. Izuku shrugs. Oh, so what schools are you trying for? You know the UA recommendations exam is in less than 3 months. Eraser grins slightly. You could get in through that, easily. Yeah, but who'd recommend me? I'll just stick to the normal exam. Besides, I'm pretty sure it'll be some sort of robots or something, which are especially susceptible to electricity. Izuku jolts slightly. That reminds me. I gotta apply to bring in my staff. Eraser chuckles. Kid, I could recommend you, you know. No, could you imagine to field day the media would have if one of the recommendation students was quirkless? Besides, worst comes to worst, my friend is applying for the support course and I'm sure we could traumatize whatever teacher we have together. Oh, God, no. Powerloader would kill me if I could take the troubled student before he even has to set eyes on you. Eraser sighs. I guess I better hope you pass that exam. Plus, if you do get into the support course, you could always transfer in through the sports festival. You teach at UA? Izuku asks, sitting next to Eraser, frowning at him. Yeah, I mean, the next generation of heroes needs to be stronger than we were, so they need all the help they can get. Eraser shrugs. I mean, you've already taught me for the past 6 months, so do I get a head start or? Izuku laughs. I'm kidding. But it would be amazing if you could still teach me. I mean, you will, either way, considering. What? Eraser blinks, frowning. Well, if I don't make it into UA, I don't exactly have a backup plan, so I probably won't stop coming out at night, and I know you have too big of a heart to leave me to my own devices. Training was getting harder. It was on purpose because 𝐬𝐸 was getting stronger and he felt like he could push himself further. He could hold his own against Eraser and Joke. He and 𝐚𝐸 were both working on the blueprints and mock-up designs for 𝐬𝐸's next shield, which should hopefully emulate Eraser's quirk. Exams were going to come up fast. 𝐬𝐸 knew that. He was trying to study too, but he only could fit studying in on Sundays, which was not the ideal day to study after working out every other day of the week. 𝐬𝐸 was determined to not mess up at all during school to avoid having any sort of record. Of course, fate often didn't comply with whatever a person was determined to do. It was lunch at school, and 𝐬𝐸 was focused on understanding the latest math problem that was presented to the class that he didn't see the person right in front of him. Watch it, Deku. The boy snaps, turning and whacking 𝐬𝐸's head. Obviously on purpose. If you weren't just standing there like an idiot, I wouldn't have. 𝐬𝐸 didn't get to finish before he was punched, straight in the nose. 𝐬𝐸 grunts, stumbling back and clutching his furiously bleeding nose. He feels his eyes watering and he may even be crying. Fuck you, 𝐬𝐸 curses, spitting the blood that managed to get in his mouth onto the other boy, who steps forward. 𝐬𝐸 doesn't even hesitate to take his legs out from under him with a swift kick. What is going on over here? A teacher asks in a shrill voice, making 𝐬𝐸 cringe away with his growing headache. Deku started a fight with me, miss. The boy on the floor says, dramatically clutching his arm with even more dramatic noises of pain, which are clearly fake. Midoriya, is this true? She twirls around with an accusatory finger pointed at 𝐬𝐸. No. 𝐬𝐸 looks up at her, blood still dripping from his nose, and he can feel bruising spread across his face. 𝐬𝐸 cups his hand under his nose to help catch the blood so it didn't get on the floor or his uniform. 𝐬𝐸 Midoriya, go straight to the principal's office right this second, she commands before turning to the other boy. Oh, come on you poor thing, let's get you to the nurse, okay. Come on, miss, can I have it in writing that you send me to the principal instead of the nurse? 𝐬𝐸 asks, stepping in front of the teacher before she could walk away with the other boy. She grumbles something, writing a quick note and shoving it in 𝐬𝐸's hand. Now get going. She snaps and immediately brushes past 𝐬𝐸. 𝐬𝐸 walks to the principal's office, knocking loudly on the door and waiting for it to open. The principal opens the door, blinking down at 𝐬𝐸, who does not look impressed. Ah, Midoriya, I already talked with Miss Yum. She explained what happened and my secretary is currently calling your mother. Sit out here and wait until she turns up. 𝐬𝐸 rolls his eyes, sitting in the seat provided. His mother arrives 10 minutes later, bright red from possibly running all the way here. 𝐬𝐸, what's this about a fight? I'll explain when we're both in the principal's office. 𝐬𝐸 mumbles, taking another tissue for his nose when the principal opens his door again. This really hurts. Ah, Mrs. Midoriya, I'm glad you're here. He steps aside. Come in, come in. 𝐬𝐸 stands, walking in behind his mother, glaring up at the principal. What is going on? 𝐀𝐦 demands, looking at the principal. 𝐬𝐸 instigated a fight with another student. The minimum punishment I could give him is a week's suspension, unfortunately. And this will also be written on his record and most likely affect with high schools he can attend. What? 𝐬𝐸 blurts out. I didn't start the fight. I'm Midoriya, don't lie. He is in a much worse state than you right now. Can I have it in writing? That you refuse to even have someone look at the injuries I got on school grounds. Though, I'm looking at it right now. The principal smirks slightly as if he won. You are not a trained medical professional. Either write me that fucking note or completely wipe this from my records. 𝐬𝐸 snaps, standing up. The principal tisks, rolling his eyes and writing out a note. If I see you on school grounds next week, I will be calling the police. 𝐬𝐸 rolls his eyes, turning to his mother. Come on, he obviously doesn't care about what actually happened. His mother blinks, nodding and gently wrapping her around 𝐬𝐸 as they leave. What happened, 𝐬𝐸? Well, I was walking down the hall and I accidentally ran into someone who decided it was appropriate to hit me twice, so I tripped him over to get him to stop and a teacher saw and I was sent to the principal while the other guy was walked to the nurse's office, even though he wasn't even bleeding. 𝐬𝐸 mumbles, anyway, I think I need the hospital because my nose is still bleeding and it really, really hurts. Of course, baby, come on. 𝐀𝐦 agrees, leading 𝐬𝐸 towards the train station to head to the hospital. Another 10 minutes later, 𝐬𝐸 is sitting down in the hospital while his mother fills out the paperwork for 𝐬𝐸 to get an X-ray. His nose is bleeding less, but 𝐬𝐸 keeps the tissue under it anyway. 𝐬𝐸 hands his mother the 2 notes that he had the teacher write him. It's medical neglect, right? Because I was obviously hurt and they both denied me treatment. Yes, it is baby, I'll take care of it. 𝐀𝐦 assures, smiling reassuringly. Thank you, Mum, 𝐬𝐸 says, gently running his hand over the strip that is keeping his nose in place. It was very much broken. He has to keep the nose cast in for at least 2 weeks, and he isn't allowed to get in any more fights. Not that he even wanted the fight he was in, but that's aside from the point. Izuku sighs when he gets home, laying on the couch and trying to relax slightly. It was a Friday and everything. No school for the next 9 days. Izuku opens his eyes, rolling over to turn on the TV. He has time to kill before his usual workout time, so he might as well use it to relax. Izuku found himself at Mei's place for the night. It was a Friday night, and Izuku didn't want to be alone. He wanted to be loud and complain about everything and anything. Mei would listen, even if it's more just not interrupting than active listening. Besides, something to focus on would help. Izuku knocks on the door, smiling at Mei as she opens it. They converse together while Mei leads Izuku to the guest room to put his bag in before they go to the lab. Their half-complete projects are laying all around the bench are pilling up slowly while they both continue to figure out what exact energy field they'd need to nullify someone's ability to use their quirks. So far, the closest they've come is apparently very painful, according to Mei. She is a volunteer to test them because Izuku doesn't have a quirk to test them on, and her brother was extremely untrusting. Something about testing something Mei made earlier that week and completely regretting it. So, what are you gonna do about that mark on your record? I'm probably gonna threaten to sue the shit out of them. And if threats don't work, then I know someone who works there. I'm sure I can explain it to him. Izuku smiles slightly. Besides, the record is less important in the support course, so if worse comes to worst, I can be stuck with you for a few months before the sports festival. Izuku jokes, laughing. I might even stay in the support course if I end up loving it as much as I love spending time with you. Mei laughs, bright and very cheerfully. I'd love to spend that much time with you. Imagine the babies we could make together. Izuku chuckles slightly. That would be amazing, Mei. All day together, 6 days a week. Power loader is already going gray. We could do so many things in that time. Oh, I could help you with your analysis stuff for more babies to be specially made. Yeah, Mei yells. She and Izuku end up spending over half the night in the lab, fine-tuning their latest project. Izuku wakes in a daze the next morning. This isn't his room, and that should freak him out more if it wasn't for the fact that he knew somewhere in his brain that he was safe. Safe enough, at least. Wakey wakey, they calls, pushing open the door. We got babies to make. Izuku hears a laugh from down the hall, and sits up, groaning. Mei. Izuku gets up, pulling on a shirt. Wow, I didn't think a small guy like you could have that much muscle. She comments, smiling at Izuku, who blushes and shrugs. I mean, I work out all the time. Izuku runs his hand through his hair and makes his way to the kitchen with Mei. Mei's mother is standing in the kitchen, at the stove with 2 plates of pancakes already sitting on the island in the middle of the kitchen. Thanks, Mum, Mei says simply, grabbing her plate. Thanks, Izuku mimics, grabbing his own plate and sitting next to Mei. You guys in the lab today? Mei's dad asks, sipping his coffee. Sure are. We have a baby to finish. We're super close. It'll definitely be done before the exam. Mei states cheerful and Izuku nods along. Izuku fidgets nervously as he waits for a racer, leaning against the brick wall outside of the community center. He's not late or anything. Izuku was early today, and it was the waiting that sucked the most. Hey, problem child, Eraser greets, and Izuku looks over at him, smiling. Hey, Eraser. Izuku nods, taking in the man's appearance. He seems better groomed than usual, hair actually brushed, clothes less crinkled. What happened to your nose? Eraser blinks at Izuku while they both start heading inside. Broke it. Fight at school, suspended for a week. Thinking about suing the place for medical neglect. Izuku simplifies, shrugging. Joke spots them, bouncing over to them with a grin. Wow, our kid getting in fights. Eraser. Joke laughs, shaking her head. For real, though, how'd you break it? Fight. I didn't start it before you ask. Wouldn't have mattered much anyway. Izuku shrugs. Oh, the other guy didn't get in any trouble either. Eraser sighs. Why didn't you get a teacher? Oh, no, a teacher saw it happen. Just, quirkless person and someone with a decently powerful quirk. I don't have to explain that one, do I? No, I dealt with my fair share of discrimination at your age. I'll make sure that it doesn't affect your application. Eraser sighs. But you can't really train with a broken nose. Yeah, I know. I just felt like I should explain in person. Izuku mumbles. You guys want to talk quirk theory for a while before I head home? I'm working on more support gear too, so we could talk about that. Izuku doesn't bother saying anything to 𝐀𝐦 while they're sitting next to one another listening to present mic. Instead, Izuku is fiddling with his new piercings. Sure, it was an impulsive decision. However, Joke and Eraser asked if there was anything Izuku wanted to have by the exam about a month ago. And Izuku knew that they were referring to skills or things to reduce his anxiety, but Izuku said piercing. And they got him one each. And somehow he also roped his mother into getting him one too. So, Izuku had 2 lip piercings, one on either side, and an eyebrow piercing on his left side, and also a septum piercing because he had enough allowance for one. So, 4 total piercings. almost completely healed. Izuku's mouth slipped, and it made a really awkwardly loud sucking noise. Izuku awkwardly covers his mouth to limit his laughter, and a boy a few rows ahead of him glares back, shortly after raising his hand to make a question about the 0-pointer. He then abruptly turns to Izuku. And that boy back there better be planning on taking out those distracting piercings if he truly wants to attend such a prestigious school. Seriously, that nose piercing makes you look like a bull. Be more respectful. Izuku narrows his eyes at the boy. Who was he to tell Izuku what to do? What if Izuku needed these piercings for his quirk? What if they were a part of his quirk? What if it was a religious thing? Why is a bull an insulting thing to be? Respectful. Izuku snorts, rolling his eyes. Idiot. Izuku climbs off the bus, adjusting his mask and tightening the strap. Izuku stands there for a second, then looks at the boy who stood up earlier. Hey, I got a question for you. Izuku starts, and the boy nods, indicating for Izuku to talk. You trying to make me fail this exam by insulting me beforehand? I get you don't like the look of my face, but people who are really important to me paid for me to decorate my face in a way that I can actually tolerate. Next time, have a bit of respect. For all you know, this could have something to do with my quirk. Izuku spoke fast, then looks up at the gate, and, because I'm actually polite and you haven't realized yet, the exam has already started. Get going. Izuku runs, deploying his pole to launch himself over the fence, and is already running through the city by the time President Mike calls out that the exam has already started. Alrighty, 1-pointer. Weak point, weak point, weak point. There, 1 down, move on. 3-pointer, weak point, top left panel. Fuck, that burns the legs to jump like that. Best use a wall next time. Alright, watch out, Izuku calls, taking out a 2-pointer that was about to wipe out a cute girl with slightly longer side bangs than her front bangs or the rest of her hair. It was kind of cute on her slightly chubbier face. Thanks, she calls, pressing her hands together, and Izuku just nods as he runs off. Gotta get more points. Gotta keep everyone safe. Izuku lost count of his points very quickly, but he didn't think he was going to get enough to pass. The robots were running out fast. As if hearing his fears, some god or another sent another robot to Izuku in the form of Hell Incarnate, a 0-pointer. Izuku feels his eyes widen but has enough mind to dodge out of the way of some debris. Fuck, isn't a robot that size is incredibly dangerous just for an exam? What kind of fucking school is this? Izuku was about to run when he heard her. The faintest help. God, she sounds hurt. Izuku spun and started running. Trapped. Too heavy to lift. Izuku shrinks his staff on the way. It might be able to lift that, or at least push it a bit. Hey, give me your hand, Izuku instructs, putting her hand on his pole. Oh god, that sounds wrong. And then directing her thumb to the button. Alright, as soon as I start lifting, push that button right there. This will be off you in just a second. Izuku moves himself to the side of the piece of rubble, gripping it. Alright, now. Izuku grunts with effort, moving the rubble off with the assistance of his staff's booster. Izuku grabs his staff from the girl, shrinking it and putting it in his holster while using his other hand to pick up the girl. Then he runs, adjusting the girl as he goes, sprinting her straight to Recovery Girl. Her leg is bent at an angle it is not supposed to be, and Izuku talks to her about how she thought she had done so far while he runs with her in his arms. She couldn't really answer him, but he says that she must have been going really well because she's super brave. Obviously, he didn't actually know if she was brave because he doesn't know her, but it works to keep her mind off her leg until he hands her off to the heroes. Izuku smiles slightly and pulls down his mask. Sorry if I was muffled at all, this is just a prototype. But I hope I didn't jostle your leg too much. Recovery Girl smiles up at him as she kisses the girl's forehead. You did very well, dearie, she smiles, extending her hand between Izuku and the girl. Have a gummy. Both of you. Izuku takes one, eating it and thanking her while the girl eats it before closing her eyes and laying back on the stretcher. Izuku gets a small rush of energy. Wow, that's probably to counteract the side effect of Recovery Girl's quirk. That's so cool and smart. What ingredient causes that? Izuku finds himself turning up to the community center on Wednesday, the only day of the week they had training today because of Izuku's exams. Hey, kid, Eraser greets, landing quietly beside Izuku. Hey, Eraser. Izuku nods, pulling down his mask. Did you watch the exam? Yeah, I did, but I can't tell you the results or even, legally, talk to you about it. But, I mean, if you overhear me talking to joke about it, Eraser chuckles slightly. It's not my fault, right? No, I don't want to know yet. I want to open the letter with my mum. Izuku smiles, walking in with Eraser and then looking at Ms. Joke. Hey, kid, how was the exam? She asks, glancing at Eraser before she fully turns to Izuku, who shrugs. It was alright. Robots, which I guessed like 3 months ago. I'm pretty sure I have a good chance at getting in, without factoring in the very likely rescue points. Cause what is being a hero without helping people? Anyway, I helped some girl with a broken leg. It was super weird to see that in person for the first time. She's fine now, but Izuku shrugs, grinning. Wow, you applying for any other schools? Oh, yeah, I applied for a couple. Plus I'm still sitting the support course exam this Friday. As a backup plan, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 smiles. I'm super excited to traumatize 𝗃𝗀𝗀, who I imagine if the person supervising the particle assessment. My co-creator is also super excited that we can work collaboratively in the exam. And 𝗲𝐬𝐴, don't be surprised if you get called in to look at something. God, this sounds like trouble. Problem children, both of you, 𝗲𝐴 states, rolling his eyes. You haven't even met her yet. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 defends, though giving 𝗲𝐴 a shit-eating grin as he does so. 𝗲𝐴 can only sigh while he tosses Joke a staff. Light training today. Joke smiles. Gotta save your terrorizing energy for those exams? Huh. She winks, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 laughs. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 walks into UA for the second time that week, side by side with his favorite chaos being, Mei. Mei is bouncing with excitement as she walks, talking about how the quirk erasing energy projector was sure to blow everyone else out of the water. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 couldn't help but agree, if only because everyone else was probably more concerned about enhancing quirks, not emulating or eliminating them. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 and Mei drift over to the support course classrooms, still chatting about what little things could be moved around to make the device work better. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 and Mei fall quiet as 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 handing in, handing out the 6-question support course exam and outlining how it would transition into practice at the 1-hour mark if they could answer the question, or after they answered the 2 questions that applied to their section of support. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 thought there were only 2 areas of support, and when he reads all the questions, he finds himself writing analysis. Why did he not realize that was a version of support? Why did he only think in terms of gear or other assistive items? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 shook his head, and he glances at the time as he finished his analysis questions. He must have done that too fast. If you are finished with the questions of your section, do the other questions. 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 instructs as he sees 𝐬𝐻𝐬's eyes breaking from the page for the first time since the exam started. All right, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 thinks to himself, flipping to the other question. Let's see if I can do all the questions in this paper. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 could, in fact, do all the questions in the paper before the hour is up and he and Mei are allowed to start working on the practical assessment. Yes, 𝐬𝐻𝐬. Mei smiles as they both compare the blueprints. This will work perfectly. You start working on your layer and I'll start on mine. Less than an hour later, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 and Mei carefully combine the 2 halves of the device, watching the pieces perfectly click together, and they both turn to 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏. Are you willing to be our test subject, sir? Mei calls, startling the poor teacher. Oh, he's going to have his work cut out for himself next year. I guess I can. Great. Mei and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 cheer together as they pull him over and sit him in front of the machine they made. All right, wiggle your fingers, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 instructs, and 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 looks suspicious as he does so. Great, Mei, turn it on. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 grins as Mei presses the button, before addressing 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 again. Try again. 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏's fingers do not move. That's weird. It's like, oh God, it's like 𝗲𝐴's quirk. 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 looks down at his hands. What the Mei, you can shut it down now. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 instructs, grinning at 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏. So, what do you think? That's very impressive. The results of this exam will come out in 3 days. Why don't you guys, hang around for a bit afterwards? I gotta call 𝗲𝐴. 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 mumbles distractedly before another student calls him over to look at their invention. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 glances at Mei and grins. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 and Mei are sitting next to each other at their workbench while they wait for 𝗲𝐴 to come. Apparently, 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 also might have called Nedzu to come to see the machine in action. Turns out, the main problem with the first model was the lack of direction. This one is more of a point-and-shoot method, like 𝗲𝗏's real quirk. Of course, it had a wider range than his quirk, but it would be weaker the more people in its range. It wasn't quite useful to 𝐬𝐻𝐬 yet. 𝗲𝗏 opens the door to the lab, glaring at 𝐬𝐻𝐬 already. Something small and fuzzy is poking out of 𝗲𝗏's scarf, but 𝐬𝐻𝐬 can't tell what it is. What did you do? He demands, storming over. Relax, 𝗲𝗏, we just made a really cool little box based on your quirk. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 grins. Oh, it's Nedzu. That's kind of fucking adorable. It's really, really cool. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 is smart to come up with ideas like this, Mei states, patting 𝐬𝐻𝐬 on the back, which makes him chuckle slightly. This is 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐬, the co-creator that I told you about. Likes making things explode. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 introduces, Mei, this is 𝗲𝗏 head, or 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, the grumpy old man who's been training me to stop me from legally fighting crime in my spare time. Legally, 𝗲𝗏 huffs, barely legal, but why am I here? 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏. I didn't know if you knew about this technology, 𝗲𝗏. It works the same, almost exactly like your quirk. Let's see it then, problem child. 𝗲𝗏 nods to 𝐬𝐻𝐬, who grins. I don't know how this will affect Nedzu, but step in front of the bench. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 nods to the front of the desk. This might, maybe, possibly, ever so slightly hurt real bad cause there's 2 of you. If it does, it's okay cause it's not the finished product yet anyway. But here we go. 3, 2, 1. Mei presses the button, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 glances at 𝗲𝗏, not in pain. Good. Now try to use your quirk on 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 for me. 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 looks at 𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏, who is moving his fingers just fine. Oh wow, great. It works perfectly fine then. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 turns the machine off, smiling at Eraser, who sighs. Nezu, however, grins. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 is making dinner for his mother the day it arrives. His letters. His mother runs into the house, still in her work clothes and barely remembering to remove her shoes. 𝐻𝐡𝐬. It came. They came. 𝐴𝐻 calls, sliding slightly on the titles of the kitchen, and 𝐻𝐡𝐬 uses a hand to steady her, smiling. Hey, Mom, he straightens her up. Just put them on the table. I'm just serving dinner now. We can open them together. 𝐴𝐻 smiles proudly at her son. No, you sit. Open one. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 smiles and lets his mom take over dishing out the food and takes the letters from her hands while he sits at the table. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 opens one at random, watching as the little disc falls onto the table and the projection starts. 𝗲𝗏 is standing there, smiling, and 𝐻𝐡𝐬 finds himself smiling at the projection as it starts talking. Third place in the support-specific written portion of the exam and tied first place for the practical exam. Wow. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 smiles up at his mother, who blinks in shock. He told her that he wanted to do the support workshop over 5 months ago, and now he was tied first in the practical exam. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 anxiously grips the second letter in his hands. Hero course. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 swallows, then thrusts the letter at his mother. I can't. Could you please open it? 𝐴𝐻 blinks as she takes it in her slightly trembling hands and slowly opens it, revealing another disc, and this time a projection of All Might. All Might. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 blinks. Attack points were not enough. That girl he saved even offered some of her points to him. Oh God. First place, 45 villain points and 55 rescue points. 100 fucking points. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 felt sick. Had there been a mix-up? No, this was UA with one of the world's smartest creature as the principal. They didn't have mix-ups. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 felt his mother hugging him, and he felt something drip onto his shirt. Tears. He was crying. His mother was bawling. He got in. He got in. He got in. I got in. Mom, I got in. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 shouts, tightly hugging his mother and bouncing in his seat. I'm gonna go to UA. I'm gonna be a hero. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 was shaking from how little he could actually express his excitement. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry I ever doubted you. His mother cries again, gripping his shirt tight in her little fists. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 sniffles. Thank you, Mom. They hug for at least an hour. By the time they pull apart, the food is cold. Still, they eat happily. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 finds himself posting his first sole post on the website he hasn't visited for nearly 9 months now. Eraserhead's kid posted, 7:43 p.m. today I got in. Hey, y'all might remember me from a post Razor made a couple of months back about the quirkless kid. I'm here to update all of you. I got in. I can't fucking believe this. 𝐻𝐻 I got first place in both the hero and support course exams. I'm going to hero school woo fucking who. 𝐻𝐻. This is making my dreams a reality. Yes. Thanks for all the encouragement, guys. I'll catch up with you later, Razor. I'm so fucking pumped. Laugher posted, 7:44 p.m. today. Congrats, kid. Catch you later. Aw, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 thinks that's sweet of joke. Also funny. I'm robbing you. Posted, 7:45 p.m. today. Congratulations. I've been hearing all about the headache you've been causing, Razor, and can't wait to see you work professionally with me to annoy the shit out of him. Professionally annoying Razor. Count 𝐻𝐡𝐬 in. 𝐻𝐻 posted, 7:49 p.m. today. You made it in. Yeah, I can't wait to teach you. The plot thickens. Seriously, who the hell is this? 𝐷𝐸 posted, 7:52 p.m. today. I'm glad you took our advice and waited until you were in a hero course before taking any reckless actions. Oh, 𝐷𝐸. That is not what happened at all. Poor guy. Hopefully, no one tells him. Truman posted, 7:55 p.m. today. I hope this means I won't have to pick you up from any more self-defense fights anymore. 𝐷𝐸. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 didn't even know he had an account of here. Oh God. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 is standing in his usual spot, waiting for Eraser. Maybe he got held up. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 checks the time again. No, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 was just early and anxious. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 starts pacing. It's fine. Eraser is probably right around the corner. Why did you show up early? You know how bad you get when you have time to overthink. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 shakes his head. It's fine. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 takes a deep breath, still pacing. He's fine, you're fine. Everything is fine. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 stops pacing, once again leaning on the wall. It's not even the usual time yet. There's no reason to freak out. Hey, kid, Eraser greets, landing behind 𝐻𝐡𝐬, grinning. Hey, Razor, 𝐻𝐡𝐬 greets in return with a small nod. So, first place, huh? Yeah, can you believe it? It's almost like I had an amazing teacher for 3/4 of the year. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 grins as they walk in. Oh yeah, there she is now. 𝐻𝐡𝐬 chuckles as Joke walks over, earning a glare from Eraser. Hey, you got in. We should celebrate. Joke smiles, lightly punching 𝐻𝐡𝐬's arm. What do you want to do today? Actually, do you think you could help me cut my hair? It's getting a bit too long and I'm starting to look a bit too much like my dad. Oh, come on, looking like Eraser is nothing to be sad about, no. Like, my bio dad, Izuku says, cutting off joke. Is that a bad thing? Eraser asks, frowning slightly. I mean, kind of, yeah. Izuku snaps a little, then cringes back. Sorry, I just don't really want to think about him. Alright, joke assures, haircut and another piercing. Izuku chuckles, grinning and nodding. Luck for you. I know someone who might be open right about now. Joke continues as Izuku and Eraser follow her out of the building. If you two can keep up, of course. She winks and runs. Izuku and Eraser are fast to follow. And they run through the city for about 20 minutes before Joke comes to a stop outside of some sort of hair, beauty, piercing, tattoo place with a glowing neon sign. The storefront is exactly what you'd expect. A clean area with a couple of lounges, a few of the tattoo artist's sketchbooks lying around. The tall, clean front counter with a bored-looking goth teen sitting behind it, who looks up just as the three of them enter. Hey there, Joke greets. Do you think someone is available for a haircut and 2 piercings for this young man right here? She slaps her hand down on Izuku's shoulder while smiling at the teen, who nods. I can check for you. It might be a wait on those piercings though. The teen stands, walking into the back room. What kind of place is open at 2 in the fucking morning? This one. What piercing are you gonna get this time? Oh, what haircut? Joke asks, smiling. Tongue, and I think right side helix. Izuku plays with his ear for a second. Nodding, undershave. Eraser groans, you're going to look like a delinquent. Izuku grins, yeah, I know. Joke laughs, I've definitely rubbed off on you. Izuku chuckles softly, shaking his head. Nah, I was always like this, just too scared to show it, I guess. I'm glad we could help you come out of your shell a bit more. Izuku nods, I'm glad you could too. Izuku thinks back to his sad little All Might-shaped trash mound. You guys are better than what my training nearly was gonna be. I definitely wouldn't have passed the entrance exam if I didn't have you guys. Are you crying? And no. Izuku sniffles, shut up. Joke pulls Izuku in for a hug, and Izuku almost finds himself pulling away, until Eraser hugs him too. Izuku couldn't keep it in no matter how hard he tried after that. Even as he's seated for his haircut, he's sniffling and wiping his eyes every few seconds. After his haircut, Izuku sits in the waiting room with Joke and Eraser, who are talking about how they're going to split the payment for it. After another half an hour, Eraser hands Joke some money and heads off for his patrol. Shame he couldn't be here for it, but Izuku understood. Izuku is standing awkwardly next to Katsuki while the careers counselor congratulates the both of them for making it into UA, with scholarships even. Katsuki's anger is obvious, and Izuku makes a note to avoid him if possible. Izuku tries to bolt as soon as they're outside, but Katsuki grabs him and drags him around the back of the school, shoving him harshly into the wall. I thought I told you not to even bother applying 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐸, nerd. Katsuki punches Izuku's stomach, but Izuku tenses and Katsuki ends up shaking the pain out of his hand. He really wasn't trying to hit Izuku hard, was he? He really seems out of practice with hitting people, or maybe he was just trying to be intimidating. 𝐀𝐻, I trained so hard, physically, mentally. I picked up support items. Izuku cuts his mumbles off with a firm look, I'm not throwing away my chance at being the best hero I can be just because I don't have a quirk. I don't understand why it matters so much to you, but do me a fucking favor and stay the fuck out of my way at UA. The Izuku Katsuki pauses, struggling for a second. I am sorry, okay. You're already a hero to me, after. Earlier this year, Katsuki finally mutters, cursing to himself afterwards and rubbing his eyes irritably. Thank you, for apologizing, 𝐀𝐻. Mom did mention something about Auntie Mitsuki making you go to therapy and stuff and I started going. But, I mean, what I'm trying to say is shut it, Katsuki snaps. Standing up straighter. Right, I'll, see you around UA, 𝐀𝐻, Izuku states, head reeling from that interaction. Katsuki nods tensely. You bet your ass you will. Izuku steps into UA for the 3rd time, smiling to himself. He's here. He's really here. A full-time hero student. Izuku walks through the halls, trying to not just stand there and dumbly try to guess and observe everyone's quirk. A lot of these kids are just support or business studies anyway. Izuku navigates his way to the hero course block, pausing for just a second before he looks down at the map in his hand and sets off towards his classroom. Did you hear that they let a quirkless person into the hero course? Some boy is talking to another boy at the back of the classroom when Izuku walks in. What? No way. I can't believe anyone could pass that exam without a quirk. The other boy replies, leaning back on the desk. He has spiky red hair and a strong build. It's disgusting. I can't believe that they'd let someone like that join the hero course. The purple-haired boy that would have to only be 3 feet tall continues, completely oblivious to the fact that Izuku is right there, and the person he is talking about. Izuku rolls his eyes, walking between the 2 boys and sitting at the desk, as it was the far back one in the corner that Izuku wanted to sit at to be able to properly observe the class and blend in while doing it. Hey, that's my seat. the short boy shouts, shaking his fist at 𝐬𝐻𝐬. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 grabs his fist, lifting the boy to face height with ease. Let me make this clear, short stack. You talk shit about me or my quirk status again, I will personally make sure that you. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 is cut off by the door slamming open to reveal a pissed Bakugo Katsuki. And 𝐬𝐻𝐬 snickers, who pissed in your cereal this morning, Kaken? None of your damn business, nerd. Why the hell are you doing with that guy? He's threatening me. The boy flails his legs, which are still not touching the ground. He said that me being in the hero course was, what was it? Disgusting. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 repeats, glaring at the boy, who swallows. Katsuki snorts, walking over to the boy. You want to be a hero? Act like it. Just because he doesn't have a quirk doesn't mean he can't or won't kick your ass. 𝐬𝐻𝐬, drop him. He looks like he's about shit himself. Katsuki laughs and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 drops the boy, who scrambles away from the both of them, screaming about them being monsters and assholes or something. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 ignores him, turning to the girl who broke her leg in the exam who just walked over to them. Hey, you're Raka, right? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 smiles, and your Raka smiles back and walks over. I never did get to thank you for the exam. Don't sweat it, I was just acting like any hero would. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 nods to her, smiling. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 could hear the purple-haired boy muttering about 𝐬𝐻𝐬 not acting like a hero towards him, to which 𝐬𝐻𝐬 could only snort. Did you get a new piercing? She asks, looking at 𝐬𝐻𝐬's ear, which makes 𝐬𝐻𝐬 grin. Yep, 2 of them. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 sticks out his tongue for her to see, then says, I'm glad that it's not swollen anymore, cause I couldn't talk for like 3 days after I had it done. They look so cool. I couldn't get any way with that. You planning on daylight hero then? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 asks, smiling slightly when the girl nods with excitement. Rescue hero. I'm a bit nervous. UA is such an incredible school. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 cuts her off with a snorting laugh, spotting something flopping down just outside the door through the legs and desks. Oh, my fucking god, Aizawa. I thought Emmy was joking. Eraserhead crawls his way into the classroom in his bright yellow sleeping bag, glaring at 𝐬𝐻𝐬, who is clutching his stomach, still laughing. He lets it happen for a few more seconds, then he just says, are you ready to start? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 shuts his mouth, stifling himself to soft giggles while nodding and trying to keep a straight face. Right, as Midoriya so tactfully announced my presence, I'm 𝐡𝐲 Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. After a few seconds of confused looks, everyone nods. Great, everyone grab a gym uniform and meet me outside. 5 minutes, Aizawa instructs, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 is the first person to get up and actually leave the room, causing the rest of the class to realize he was serious. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 was glad he didn't bother with the tie this morning because it was easier to nod of it when changing quickly. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 had actually practiced getting dressed and undressed quickly when he was younger, and also a few times more recently because he knew that heroes have very little time to prepare in a crisis, which is also a part of the reason his hero outfit was going to be almost exactly the same as what he has been wearing, because he could wear that comfortably for the rest of his life, like Aizawa with his jumpsuit. Maybe Aizawa has 2 jumpsuits and just alternates between them. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 shook his head. That doesn't matter, gotta get outside. Hey, about earlier, I'm really sorry about 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬. I didn't think he was going to be like that. Not manly at all. You must be so manly to make it through that entrance exam without a quirk, the red hair boy says, zipping up the front of his sports uniform, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 nods in acknowledgement. Yeah, it's nothing I'm not used to. Y'all better hurry up though. Aizawa has the highest expulsion rate of any UA teacher. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 calls out, already at the door while the rest of the boys flail in an attempt to get dressed faster. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 waits with Aizawa while a few other students filter out of the locker rooms. So, what do you think of your classmates? Aizawa asks, staring blankly at the rest of the class. Oh, I'd love to punt 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬 into the sun. The quirkest bastard. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 sighs. Shame he was easy to intimidate, though. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 perks up slightly. Oh, wait, you're my teacher here. Yeah, everyone seems nice. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 corrects himself, cringing slightly. I'm sure you can handle 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬 yourself, but if you want me to step in, I'm more than happy to. Aizawa glances at 𝐬𝐻𝐬, who shakes his head. No, but how much could I get away with doing back? I don't want to go too far. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 looks back over to where most of the class is ready and waiting. I trust you to exercise your best judgment. That's Aizawa. Forgive him more hell than you do me. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 nods with a grin. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 then walks over to the rest of the students, smiling softly at Uraraka, who steps closer to him. What were you guys talking about? She whispers, glancing nervously at Aizawa. Oh, just how I was liking everyone and stuff. We've known each other for a while now. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 smiles. He really helped me with exam prep. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬 mumbles under his breath. Of course, the quirkless freak needed extra help to get in. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 discreetly steps over a bit and then swipes his foot, hitting the backs of both 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬's knees and making him stumble forward a bit. Hey, what the hell? He calls out, glaring at 𝐬𝐻𝐬, who blinks down at him. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 smiles, muttering dangerously quiet, but I sure fucking heard you. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐬, Aizawa calls. and 𝗀𝗐𝐬 perks up, going to speak before Eraser cuts him off. Pay attention. Bakugo, come forward. Aizawa hands Katsuki a ball. What's your best ball toss in middle school? 67 meters. Katsuki responds, blandly looking at Aizawa. Quirk assessment test. Huh? Izuku looks around. These are some powerful quirks, so. Damn, try it now. With your quirk, Aizawa instructs. Nodding, anything goes, just stay in the circle. Katsuki shrugs, swinging his arm around a little to stretch it before he tosses the ball with a yell. It wasn't exactly a word, just a scream that was punctuated with an explosion. Aizawa smiles as his little machine beeps, showing 705. 2 meters. Quirk assessment test. Whoever comes last will be expelled. Anything goes. Izuku grins, eyes scanning his classmates with a bit more desire. Who can help with each test the most? Uraraka's zero gravity would work better for ball throw than Katsuki's explosions. What other tests are there? 50-meter dash. He was glad he was doing this with Uraraka because getting Katsuki to launch him with an explosion probably wouldn't work as well as it used to. Hey, Uraraka, make me float with your quirk and I'll pull you behind me. It'll get both of us there faster. Izuku extends his hand for her to tap, and she hesitates for a moment. Are you sure that's allowed? She asks, rubbing the back of her hand with the other and rotating one leg on the toes of her foot. Nervous much? Even if it isn't, it shows quick thinking and teamwork. We can always redo the test afterwards. Izuku assures and grins when Uraraka hesitantly taps his hand. Weightlessness was a weird sensation, but Izuku found himself grinning as he grabs Uraraka's hand and prepares to run. The gun is fired, and Izuku tosses Uraraka to the end of the track after running a little bit of it, dragging her behind him. 8 seconds for Uraraka. 3:78 for Izuku. Much better than what it could have been. One of the fastest in the class, at any rate. What the hell? You can't use someone else's quirk just cause you don't have your own. That's fucking cheating. Sensei said that anything goes. Izuku states, feeling his gravity return to him, and he turns to Aizawa. Unless you want us to go again. But I just thought that no. You use the resources available to you to get the desired outcome. The results stay, for both of you. Aizawa looks at 𝗀𝗀. It has nothing to do with his quirk status, just his intelligence. 𝗀𝗀 sputters for a few seconds, then just walks off towards the next test, grumbling. Izuku smiles at Uraraka, who seems slightly pale. See, I told you he'd let it stand. Izuku nods his head, towards the next test. Come on, let's do some sit-ups. Yeah, sit-ups. Izuku couldn't do anything about his grip strength, repeated side steps, the long-distance run, his sit-up count, or his seated toe touch. Of course, he did extremely well in the long-distance run, apparently. He has high endurance for that sort of thing after training for hours every day for the past year. Grip strength wasn't too bad either, after all the Parker and gymnastics. The seated toe touch was easy enough to get the best result. He had been an almost fully trained gymnast by now. He trained to be extremely flexible. Sit-ups, which Eraser made him do every day as a warm-up anyway, he wasn't terrible at. Side steps were also fairly easy compared to the fact that he used to do them on mounds of trash. Not that he'd ever tell anyone why he was so good at them. 𝗀𝗀 used his balls to bounce extremely quickly on the side step, easily the best in the class. Izuku watched his skin literally repel whatever makes the ball sticky, which easily throws 𝗀𝗀 into the other ball. If he was even slightly off in the placement of the balls, he would be thrown back or forwards and it wouldn't have worked at all, so Izuku had to admit he was at least somewhat smart. Last was ball throw. Hey, Uraraka, give me a hand. Izuku asks, tossing her the ball, which she nullifies the gravity for and tosses it back, very gently. Izuku uses his hand to bat it into the sky. The little machine lights up, another infinity symbol. That was easy enough. Izuku grins as he walks back over to the group of students. Everyone was talking to Uraraka and Izuku after the 50-meter dash. Of course, this pissed 𝗀𝗀 off. Or maybe it was the fact that he was coming last. Izuku yawns, and he hears Ida approach him. Hello, I just wanted to say thank you and sorry for during the entrance exam I was rude to you and I didn't think about how it might affect your performance. However, I must once again ask you about you getting piercings. Ida makes a few stiff motions with his hands, and Izuku sighs, rolling his eyes. As a hero, you'll need to set an example for your fans and, well, actually, I'm planning on going underground. Besides, no one here cares how I look. Aizawa even paid for a third of these piercings. Izuku shrugs, not to mention the haircut. Ida nods understandingly and goes to say something before he is cut off. That's it. 𝗀𝗀 screams, arms flailing by his side in his tantrum. He even buys you things. Favoritism. Blatant favoritism. Izuku rolls his eyes. No shit, short stack. I'm his favorite pain in the ass. Izuku hears Eraser snort. Plus, I gave him an excuse to hang out with his crush 3 times a week. Aizawa coughs. Stepping over Midoriya, she's just Izuku glances at him, grinning and chuckling. Relax, I'm joking. Mr. Aizawa, please. 𝐻𝐻 starts getting cut off. No longer a student here, Aizawa states, glaring down at 𝐻𝐻. He scored the lowest in the class. Izuku glances over to the board and blinks in surprise. 9th place, Mina just below him, Uraraka in 11th. Not bad. You were serious about that. 𝐻𝐻 shrieks, stepping back as tears start flowing out of his eyes. You can't. I can, Aizawa assures, but 𝐻𝐻 steps between them. Sir, with all due respect, that is a bit extreme for the first day. If anything, 𝐻𝐻 has the most room to improve out of the whole class, 𝐻𝐻 states, adjusting his glasses. Although I do not agree with what he has said or done thus far, it seems counterintuitive to expel someone who has so much to learn. Aizawa hums in thought and meets eyes with Izuku. What do you think? Well, I don't know. I know it would be really hard to get so close to being a hero. Getting into UA is a feat in and of itself, and then having it taken away over something that could improve with training. Izuku looks down at 𝐻𝐻, disgust on his face, but that's just because I'm capable of sympathy. Alright, why don't we put it to a vote? 𝐻𝐻 suggests. Heroics is often about public opinion. After all, a chorus of nods or agreements later. Alright, raise your hand if you wish to see 𝐻𝐻 stay and grow as a person. 1, 2, 6, 10. Alright, sir, the majority of the class thinks 𝐻𝐻 should stay. Alright, fine. But if he fails the exams at the end of the semester, I'm booting him out. Aizawa grumbles. The bell sounds, and everyone runs off to get changed and head to the other classes. Izuku flicks one of 𝐻𝐻's hairballs on the way out of the locker room, snickering when the boy shouts something after him. Izuku walks past the teacher's lounge with 𝐻𝐻, Uraraka, Kirishima, and, surprisingly, Katsuki. Kirishima is talking loudly about Aizawa, how he looks and acts so weird for the only non-pro hero in the school. Kiri, Aizawa is a pro. His hero name is Eraserhead. Izuku corrects, smiling slightly. He's my favorite hero, though I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of him. He's been underground for his whole career. Midoriya, just the young boy I was looking for. All Might's voice echoes through the hallway, making everyone in the group jump slightly. Izuku blinks, spinning around, eyeing the hero suspiciously. What for? I have private things to discuss with you. Why don't the rest of you get to lunch? Midoriya will catch up with you in a moment. All Might's smile doesn't fade, and he leads Izuku back towards the teacher's lounge. Izuku eyes him warily. Alright, what is it? He asks as they step into the empty teacher's lounge. Why did you ask if you could be a hero if you were going to disregard my advice? All Might asks, and Izuku frowns. Elaborate. Izuku puts his hands in his pockets, unlocks his phone and starts recording. I told you that you couldn't be a hero. All Might starts, arms crossing over his chest, staring down at Izuku disapprovingly. Izuku would have wilted at the stare months ago, but Izuku trained with Eraser, who could make the sun disappear if he glared hard enough. Because it's dangerous. I know it's dangerous, I just don't care. Izuku states, narrowing his eyes further at All Might, who starts digging his own grave. You couldn't even defeat one villain yourself. All Might sighs, exasperatedly, like Izuku doesn't hear that all the time. Are you referring to the sludge villain? Because I can handle almost all villains I've ever come across. Izuku tilts his head, faking confusion. Yes, the villain that very nearly killed you, the villain that Death Arms, Backdraft, Kamui Woods, and Mount Lady all also couldn't defeat. Izuku asks, glaring up at the hero, are you going to go to them and tell them to revoke their licenses and choose a different career? Of course not. They're already pro heroes and they were more concerned about the fires, alright? So you, All Might, are going to walk down that fucking hallway and tell Bakugo Katsuki that he can't be a hero, because it was his quirk that caused those fucking fires that prevented him from being saved. Izuku takes a deep breath, trying to soothe his anger. How dare he? What a fucking asshole. No, young Bakugo has plenty of potential to become an amazing hero. You are lucky you even have the option to get into the support course. All Might retorts, standing a bit taller in an attempt to intimidate Izuku. Really? Izuku feels tears pricking his eyes, but refuses to let them fall. The reason that he is even alive is because I ran in to help him. You alone would have been too fucking late. And you know it. You can't tell me that I can't be a hero just because I don't happen to have a quirk. Midoriya, no, shut up. Shut the fuck up and listen to me, Izuku snaps. Stepping closer to the number one hero, All Might, you're such a piece of fucking shit. You come into my life saying I can't be a hero. And for what? My life is more in danger in my own hands. Izuku feels an arm around him, pulling him back from All Might. And for a second, he wants to fight against it and attack him. However, Izuku just turns to face Aizawa, who seems incredibly concerned and also a bit angry. Why? It wasn't at Izuku, was it? What? Aizawa gently pulls Izuku out of the room. Through the small crowd of teachers into the hallway, what happened? I don't want to talk about it. Izuku grumbles, then looks up at Aizawa's concerned face, sigh. immediately breaking eye contact to blink away a few tears that were forming. About 10 months ago, the first in-person villain I ever encountered. I was saved by All Might and I asked him if I could be a hero without a quirk. I thought, he's a hero, #1, my favorite. If anyone is going to encourage me, it's him, right? Izuku laughs bitterly, wiping under his eyes. Anyway, the villain got away from All Might, which was probably my fault, but it happened. Anyway, so, the same villain attacked Kaken. Bakugo Katsuki, and that was technically my first time being not a vigilante, but, I intervened. Izuku shrugs. I just went home after that. Said I'd never run an unprepared again, so I picked up support gear and started training. I started going out whenever I had nightmares about it. This whole time, this is a coping mechanism. Aizawa runs his hands through his hair. Kid, I do have a therapist, Izuku rolls his eyes, his body language relaxing a little. It stopped being a coping mechanism a while ago. I'm getting better. Well, I feel like I am. Izuku shrugs. Obviously I'm going to backtrack a little. I've been around people who support me so much that I forgot everyone else hates me. No one hates you, Eraser sighs. I have to talk with Nezu about All Might. Hopefully, he'll be fired. Izuku flinches at the yelling coming from inside the teacher's lounge and Eraser gestures for him to go to the cafeteria. I'll take care of it. You go eat something. I'll organize some time for us to train that isn't in the middle of the night with you tomorrow. Izuku glances at the door once before he looks back at Eraser and nods. He trusts Eraser to handle it. He's probably the first teacher Izuku's ever trusted. Izuku finds his way to the cafeteria and grabs something to eat. Not that he really feels like eating, before his eyes land on a familiar head of pink hair. May, he yells, the mood immediately higher. Walking over to her, come sit with us. She's probably loud enough that Izuku won't have to think about what just happened, right? Izuku, she yells back, launching onto him, of course. Izuku smiles and guides her over to his friend's table. Everyone, this is May, my best friend, from the support course. Izuku introduces, smiling, May, this is Uraraka, Ida, Bakugo, Kirishima. Izuku gestures to each of them when he says their names. Katsuki frowns at Izuku, almost pouting. I thought I was your fucking best friend. He mutters, glaring at Izuku, who shrugs. Sorry, I met her while you were being an asshole, and I can have 2 best friends now that you're less of an asshole. Izuku smiles, sitting May down and sitting across from her, next to Katsuki. Kirishima laughs. Wow, no wonder you guys were best friends. You both swear every second word. We do fucking not. Izuku and Katsuki snap at the same time. Everyone laughs, and Izuku grins slightly, fondly shaking his head while Katsuki curses again. So, what did All Might want? Uraraka asks, smiling at Izuku. I bet he wants to train you or something, like Aizawa, right? Izuku's mood plummets, face falling with it. Let's just leave it at he'll be lucky if he keeps his job, okay? Izuku cracks open his food to avoid looking at anyone's expression, the smell hitting his nose and making his mouth water. Okay, maybe he was hungry. Now I really want to know what happened, Kirishima says, leaning forward and meeting Izuku's eyes intensely. Izuku shrugs. He just, he told me I couldn't be a hero and to give up. Izuku runs a hand through his hair, sighing. Again. Katsuki hisses. He's said it before. Izuku swallows. You know how I ran in to save that incident we were both involved in 10 months ago now. Katsuki nods and Izuku continues. So, I was attacked by the same villain earlier and All Might saved me then and I asked if I could be a hero and he said no. Izuku. Katsuki grabs Izuku's shoulders. Why the fuck didn't you tell me? It just never came up. Izuku grabs one of Katsuki's wrists. Kaken, it wasn't a big deal, okay. I've had people saying that my whole life, you know that better than anyone. But you got in. The same as anyone else at this school. Hell, you got first fucking place. If anyone deserves to be a hero, it's you. He got tied first for the support course too. May pipes up. All Might is dumb to immediately dismiss you without taking into account your intellect, or your kindness to others, your ability to forgive and understand. Ida pipes up, chomping at the table. Izuku snorts lightly, nodding. Thanks, guys, it's nice to have people care. Of course, we all care, Uraraka assures, looking a bit horrified. Izuku nods, eating his lunch while the conversation trails off to other things. Izuku's day was going normal. Or well, as normal as he expected in hero school. Then he was called to the principal's office after lunch. During English, he didn't leave his bag either, mainly because of his anxiety. Mike didn't seem to mind the interruption and he smiled at Izuku and even gave him a reassuring pat on the back on the way past. Izuku could only manage a small smile and it fell off his face as soon as he was out of the classroom. This made him very nervous, though he knew it was probably just something to do with All Might. That actually didn't help him feel better. Izuku walked into the staff room in a very sensitive mood. He was a bit confused as to why the principal's office was through the staff room, but UA was a weird high school. Izuku didn't get a chance to knock before the door swung open on its own. revealing an exhausted skeletal form of All Might and Principal 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐸, would you like a cup of tea? 𝐀𝐦 asks, and 𝐍𝐸 steps into the room, letting the door swing shut behind him. You got it iced? 𝐍𝐸 asks, sitting down in the chair next to All Might. I just had my tongue pierced. All Might looks at him inquisitively, and 𝐍𝐸 uses this as the perfect excuse to stick out his tongue at the man. Of course, 𝐀𝐦 stands from his seat, disappearing behind his desk. The sound of a mini fridge opening and closing echoes in the room, and 𝐀𝐦 reappears with a cup full of ice cubes a second later. Here you are. 𝐀𝐦 pours some tea into the cup and hands it to 𝐍𝐸, who sips it. What kind of tea is it? 𝐍𝐸 asks, sipping the tea. My therapist gives this to me all the time. Oh, you're in therapy. That's good. 𝐀𝐦 smiles. I would like to discuss what course of corrective action you think we should take with All Might here. What options are there? 𝐍𝐸 asks, sipping his tea again. Well, he can be fired. He could become a teaching assistant. He could be suspended. He could be supervised for a semester. 𝐀𝐦 lists, smiling as All Might squirms uncomfortably. We could realize the footage and completely destroy his career. Oh, I haven't decided on that last one. 𝐍𝐸 chuckles, shaking his head slightly. If he becomes a teacher's assistant, who would the teacher be? We'd have to have a staff meeting, but most likely it would be a rotation of teachers to give the best variety of teaching styles. 𝐁𝐦 sips his tea. 𝐍𝐸 hums, looking at All Might, then turning back to 𝐁𝐦, grinning as he has an idea. How about he teaches every second day, and on those days I go to the support lab. I could take an extra lesson with Razor in those afternoons as well. I didn't think of that. That seems acceptable. Of course, that all depends on PowerLoader, and 𝐁𝐦 smiles at 𝐍𝐸, huffing his laughter. Razor, I'm impressed by your fast problem-solving skills and your maturity here, though All Might arguably does not deserve it. Thank you, but maturity does not describe what this is. 𝐍𝐸 sips his tea. I assume you already told your friends about what he said. 𝐁𝐦 grins, significantly more sadistically than before, and 𝐍𝐸 grins in response. Yep, good luck with that, especially 𝐀𝐦. 𝐍𝐸 chuckles slightly. Shame I won't be there to see it. Though, if you wouldn't mind showing me the footage after. 𝐁𝐦 chuckles slightly. �midoriya, I would like to say that I'm deeply sorry. All Might states, standing to bow to 𝐍𝐸. All Might, I'd like you to say that too, but you didn't. 𝐍𝐸 stands, sitting down his empty glass on 𝐁𝐦's desk, turning to look at the somehow even more distressed All Might. I am deeply sorry for the way my words affected you. All Might says, still bowing. Oh, but you aren't sorry for the words themselves? 𝐍𝐸 teases, smirking slightly. This is a shitty apology. I'm sorry for saying you couldn't be a hero. I was wrong. All Might glances up at 𝐍𝐸, who shrugs. I don't forgive you. Try again next week. 𝐍𝐸 bites back a grin as All Might sighs, straightening up. Also, I do expect you to cover my emergency therapy appointment this afternoon very well. All Might looks at 𝐁𝐦, bowing slightly. I will see you tomorrow, but I really must be going to my own appointment. 𝐍𝐸 watches as he leaves, and turns back to 𝐁𝐦, who smiles, busy first day. 𝐍𝐸 chuckles, nodding, very. I should probably head back to class. Maybe I should see PowerLoader. Oh, don't you worry about that just yet. Go back to class, your friends are probably worried. 𝐁𝐦 gestures for 𝐍𝐸 to leave, still smiling. 𝐍𝐸 yawned as he sat on the train home, tucking away his now finished homework and looking out the window at the city. It was pretty, the sun setting in the distance, painting the sky red, orange, purple, and even a few shades of pink. Still not as pretty as it is at night. The train ride home, a new normal from today. It felt good to have that change for 𝐍𝐸 going to his dream school. It made 𝐍𝐸 feel warm. He was going to be a hero. No matter what All Might said, 𝐍𝐸 could be a hero. 𝐍𝐸 even felt warm the whole walk back from the train station. This was going to be good. A good change. 𝐍𝐸 opens the door to the apartment, smiling at his mother, who had probably only gotten home about 20 minutes before 𝐍𝐸 himself. Hey, Mama. 𝐍𝐸 sets his bag down, taking off his shoes. Sorry about being so late. I had to make an emergency appointment with my therapist over some things that happened at school today. 𝐍𝐸 walks up beside his mother, kissing her cheek gently as she hums an acknowledgement. What happened at school today? She asks, frowning slightly as 𝐍𝐸 hugs her. I was supposed to meet your partner today. 𝐍𝐸 jolts. I'm late. I'm so sorry, Mum. His mother chuckles softly, taking 𝐍𝐸's cheek in her palm the way she did when he was a small boy, making 𝐍𝐸 pause to look at her. She seems happy, so nothing bad happened between them. She gently runs her hand through 𝐍𝐸's shave, smilingly fondly at the haircut. She did that a lot this past week. 𝐍𝐸, you can go change, shower, and then tell me about your day on the way to the restaurant. Apparently, she made the reservation later than she was supposed to. 𝐀𝐦 turns back to her phone, giggling. Oh, that's so cute. As she. 𝐍𝐸 blinks. A woman? I knew it. 𝐍𝐸 cheers, running to his room, grabbing a button-up shirt and jeans that his mother set out on the bed for him. Thanks, Mum, you're the best. How long do we have? Oh, 𝐬𝐡𝐢, before you shower, you should know she is a pro hero, his mother calls, smiling as 𝐬𝐡𝐢 spins around and falls on his ass. What? A limelight hero? 𝐬𝐡𝐢 gets up, stumbling to look at his mother, like how high in the hero rankings. Yeah, she's pretty high in the rankings. His mom smiles. That's why we haven't been to public about our relationship. His mother smiles, but she's excited to meet you. How high up is she? 𝐬𝐡𝐢 frowns. In the top 10. His mother smiles. Go shower or we'll be late. Lesbian in the top 10. Well, there is only 2 female heroes in the top 10 and Ryukyu is married. So, Marco, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 realizes, bouncing on the spot, she's the highest ranking female hero. She's a completely lone hero, too. Things must be pretty serious between them if Marco wants to meet 𝐬𝐡𝐢. Maybe this will help her overcome her trust issues. 𝐬𝐡𝐢, shower. Now, go. 𝐴𝐻 ushers, laughing slightly. That's her baby boy. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 fiddles with the collar of his shirt for the 100th time, muttering excitedly about his mother dating the number 5 hero. The train ride was taking forever, and 𝐬𝐡𝐢 kept messing his hair up. His mother scolded him every time, fixing it to the best of her abilities before she eventually gave up. His fidgeting was getting worse as time goes on, clearly feeling more anxious and excited. After what seemed like both forever and 2 minutes at the same time, 𝐬𝐡𝐢 finally could get off the train. The restaurant is only a few blocks away, and 𝐬𝐡𝐢 was practically bouncing the whole way there. Hey, love. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 hears someone call out, and he watches his mother's head snap up with such a happy look on his face that he almost melts, and it's not even directed at him. Rumi, she calls, rushing forward, deeper into the restaurant with 𝐬𝐡𝐢 trailing a bit behind her. She seemed so happy that 𝐬𝐡𝐢 felt as though he was an intruder. He knew he was invited, but that didn't stop his heart from racing. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 waits for the 2 women to pull away from their hug and sit down before he sits. So this is the little troublemaker, huh? Rumi asks, smiling at 𝐬𝐡𝐢, who frowns at his mother. Yay, this is him. 𝐬𝐡𝐢. He hasn't gotten in trouble for 3 months now. I guess breaking his nose knocked some sense into him. 𝐴𝐻 smiles, and Rumi giggles, shaking her head. 𝐬𝐡𝐢's frown deepens a bit further. I thought he would be taller. Rumi laughs softly. I guess trouble comes in all sizes, huh? 𝐬𝐡𝐢 snorts, rolling his eyes. His mother giggles softly, putting her hand on Rumi's arm and lowering her voice slightly. You know, he's a huge hero fan. Oh, yeah. You want to be a hero when you're older? Rumi asks, grinning at 𝐬𝐡𝐢, who nods. Yeah, I just got into UA. He shifts his thighs and slides one of his hands underneath it to keep himself from fiddling with his newest piercing. Oh, really? I didn't go to UA. What's it like? She asks, smiling at 𝐬𝐡𝐢, who is seeming to open up a little. It's okay. I mean, most of it is great. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 mumbles. I kinda yelled at All Might earlier today, so. You yelled at All Might? 𝐴𝐻 asks, staring at 𝐬𝐡𝐢. Yeah, I mean, he said I couldn't be a hero and I wasn't about to tolerate that from the guy who was supposed to teach me how to be a hero. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 shrugs and the waiter stops beside their table. Are we ready to order our drinks? He asks, standing straight, notepad and pen at the ready. Oh, yes, 𝐻𝐻 smiles. I think a bottle of wine for Rumi and I and whatever 𝐬𝐡𝐢 wants. Oh, just some aloe vera water. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 smiles, nodding slightly as if confirming his own thoughts. The waiter nods and walks away from the table. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 glances down at the menu he was given, picking it up to read it. Is that why you were late today? 𝐻𝐻 asks, frowning. Theoretically, yes. Yeah. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 looks up at her. Anyway, I may have called him a piece of shit and, sort of, maybe, got him removed from his position as a permanent teacher, so. Oh, wow. Rumi blinks, shaking her head. Why did he say you couldn't be a hero? Did Mum not tell you already? 𝐬𝐡𝐢 frowns slightly, looking at his mother, who shakes her head. No, I figured you would want to do it yourself. 𝐻𝐻 rubs her hands together nervously. Oh, right. Thanks, I guess. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 looks at Rumi, who is blinking, very confused at the both of them. All Might's opinion is not exactly unpopular, because most people think a quirkless person can't be a hero. Oh, a beat of silence. Well, 𝐬𝐡𝐢, how are all your other teachers and your classmates? His mother asks, as it was clear Rumi didn't know how to react to this information. Oh, they're good, mostly. I mean, Razor is a bit more strict than I thought he was gonna be. Razor. Like, a racerhead. Rumi frowns. You know him? Oh my god, you're that kid SHH. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 shushes, frowning slightly. How did you hear about me? Oh, I talk with Mike and Numiri about how Eraser is going to try and adopt the kid he's been training. Razor is not gonna adopt me. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 frowns. He knows that my mother would never let him, pro hero or not. Rumi snorts. Yeah, they said something about that. She chuckles. I think they mean metaphorically, like training you and stuff. Who are we talking about? 𝐻𝐻 interrupts, frowning at both of them. Just the pro hero WH. No. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 says quickly, SHH. She doesn't know. What don't I know? 𝐻𝐻 snaps, folding her arms and staring down the both of them. Izuku and Rumu shrink slightly, meeting eyes for a second before Izuku stares at the table and Rumi turns to her girlfriend. Love, she starts, gently running her thumb over 𝐀𝐻's hand. I swear it's nothing bad. Does this have something to do with you going out in the middle of the night, Izuku? His mother demands, ignoring her girlfriend. It might, Izuku admits reluctantly, followed by, stop asking about it. And your mother? My therapist says I need to set firm boundaries. This is a boundary, and as my mother, you'll respect that. Izuku meets his mother's eyes, the same hard stare as what she had on a few seconds before. After a few seconds, 𝐀𝐻 nods. So, what sort of hero are you gonna be? Rumi asks, tilting her head with a smirk. You're gonna be an independent hero, like me, aren't you? Izuku chuckles, shaking his head. I don't know, at this point. I don't think I would mind working with my friends, honestly. We might start an agency together if we don't drag each other down when we work together. Izuku shrugs, smirking slightly. Of course, you'll be welcome to work with us anytime. Rumi laughs. I work alone. You sound like a racer. Izuku lowers his voice in a terrible mimic of a racer's voice. I work alone. I've never smiled a second of my life, no matter what anyone said, and all photos proving otherwise are faked. Rumi laughs harder, getting a few looks from other tables. Izuku chuckles slightly. Izuku smiles slightly, watching his mother leaning on her girlfriend, giggling at a joke that she just said. 𝐀𝐻 was a bit drunk. It was pretty funny if Izuku was being honest. She mostly just listened, let Izuku and Rumi sort out getting to know each other and ice-breaking. It was nice to see his mother happy with her girlfriend. Rumi had offered to help get his mother home, and Izuku agreed. Izuku had never really seen his mother drunk, so it was interesting to see her red-faced and giggling like an idiot. Izuku unlocks the front door, stepping aside and helping Rumi get his mother's shoes off before they both take their shoes off and get 𝐀𝐻 to bed. Izuku wanted to go straight to bed himself, and Rumi seemed to be staying as she settled in with 𝐀𝐻 while 𝐀𝐻 was still a happy, giggling mess. Izuku smiles slightly as he closes the door, and then head to his room, opening the door and glaring at all the 𝐻𝐷 posters, which he quickly takes down and rolls up before tossing them all in a box. Next, scooping all his figurines into the same box and tossing the box into the corner. 𝐻𝐷, Izuku huffs, flopping backwards onto his bed. How fucking rude of him. Hey, child, I know you got first place in the entrance exam for 2 different courses, but I think you shouldn't be a hero because of something completely arbitrary and out of your control. Ugh, Izuku huffs, punching his pillow harshly and rolling over to stare blankly at the wall. Today sucked. He should have gotten mine to expelled. But, then again, he's never had someone to irritate, playfully irritate. He kind of deserved it. It was mostly playful. He didn't really want to hurt anyone, even Mayta, except maybe 𝐻𝐷. Though, it would take more than a video of Izuku yelling at him to take away his #1 spot. No, it would take time and it would take a whole lot of change of public opinion. Izuku wasn't exactly knowledgeable about how to go about that, but he could probably figure it out. He had an hour every second day to figure it out now. He could hang out with his best friend and figure out how to completely change the public opinion on people, which is arguably a good trait to have as a hero, even if he was going underground. Scratch that, especially if he is going underground. Altering the public opinion on villains, who are trying to be seen as a good guy that does bad things but for the right reasons, will come in handy. He could set up his platform now and have it be set up well before he becomes a hero. Ugh, no. He didn't need to think about this before bed. He needs sleep. Maybe 𝐁𝐻 would help him. Not with sleeping, but with the other thing. Izuku tries to stretch and then realizes he was still in a button-up. Maybe he should take that off. Sleeping in a shirt like this wasn't good for the shirt, right? Oh, maybe he should just get up and maybe do that homework. Midnight was definitely a sadist, giving a 1,000-word essay on the first day. It was due next week, but Izuku wanted to get it out of the way while he was struggling to sleep. Izuku had no idea about anything to do with art really, so it kind of sucked. Izuku started his essay with "You're such a fucking sadist. But here's your damn essay," with the intent to delete it before he sent it in. He usually proofreads everything anyway, so what's the harm in having some fun with it before editing it fully? Izuku started his research with the marking guild to tell him what to include. He got out at least 500 words before he was again tired enough to sleep. He saved his draft, making sure to save it to his personal files. It's not like it was anything great, but he didn't want people reading the shitty jokes and shit he had written to keep himself entertained while working. Izuku leans against the walls of the train, looking around at the sea of uniforms around him. This was interesting, to be the elite kid. There were only 2 other UA uniforms on the train, one of them being an older business student and the other being a general studies student around Izuku's age, with purple hair. Izuku tried not to stare, but his hair looked so fluffy and Izuku just wanted to walk over and start patting him. That was rude, though, and Izuku was not about to be rude to someone he didn't know anything about. Izuku knew that Katsuki caught the train closer to his house and that he would be the only UA student on that train. Izuku wondered how many of these kids tried to get into UA. It must have been a real kick in the ass to have a quirkless kid get first place. Not that anyone except his class and the teachers should know that right now. But kids talk. Rumors spread fast. And a quirkless kid in the hero course is gonna cause discord. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 idly wondered if he was going to be in the hero course today for the first lesson, or if it would be All Might. Having all the students present for the first day was important, but so was having a moral-boosting teacher, and not everyone in the class knew about what All Might had said yesterday, if they even cared about that. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 could probably handle sitting in class for half a lesson with All Might if necessary. Hopefully, it wouldn't be necessary. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 stood fully as the train slowed to a stop. The other two UA kids also stood, and the younger of the two glanced at 𝐬𝐻𝐸 and seemed to hover slightly. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 glanced at him with a tilted head, a small smile tugging on his lips. He was curious about what the kid could want, and if the kid was actually gonna say anything. After a few more seconds of debating with himself, the other kid just shakes his head, deciding that whatever it was he wanted wasn't worth it. Shame, he could have completed 𝐬𝐻𝐸's crew of secondary hair colors. Though May's was pink, not orange, plus 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was 80% sure that Kirishima hair wasn't naturally red. Red did suit him though, so 𝐬𝐻𝐸 wasn't about to point it out. Red was a primary color, but Katsuki's blonde could count as yellow and Iida's hair is blue, so technically 𝐬𝐻𝐸 had all the primary colors and was now collecting all the secondary colors, including purple. This kid was gonna be 𝐬𝐻𝐸's friend because 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was not about to be friends with Mineta just to collect all the colors in hair. At any rate, this was a weird way to think about making friends, so 𝐬𝐻𝐸 needed to stop. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 sits in the classroom, tapping his pen idly against his notebook. He was tired, and last night he found himself practically finishing Midnight's paper because he woke up and couldn't get back to sleep. All those midnight, early mornings workout really messed up his sleep cycle. But it was still his spare time and he could use it the same. He should probably invest in home workout gear or something. Maybe he just needed to work out more during the day. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 shook his head slightly to clear it. Heroics should start soon. And 𝐬𝐻𝐸 never did find out who was teaching today. Aizawa walks in, tired as ever, followed by Nezu and a very nervous All Might. All Might didn't look nervous, but 𝐬𝐻𝐸 could just tell sometimes. A few people made a comment about All Might while 𝐬𝐻𝐸 kept his eyes on Aizawa. Aizawa seemed slightly angry, however, he was containing it. Nezu grins at the class, standing on the desk to make himself more visible. Hello, 1A. I'm Principal Nezu. I have a few important things to discuss with you all. Nezu starts. This is regarding whether or not All Might should continue to be a teacher here. Why wouldn't he be a teacher here, Kiro? A girl asks, the one with the frog quirk. Her hair is a shade darker than 𝐬𝐻𝐸's, and she has it long and tied with itself in a bow close to her waist. Her face is plain, and not quite expressionless but less expressive than the average person. All Might has violated one of the main terms of his contract, while the individual most affected has said how they would like things to proceed. We have a few other staff members concerned about how his actions may negatively affect his behavior towards the students affected. Oh, is that why Midoriya was pulled out of class early yesterday? The invisible girl, Hagakure asks, seeming to raise her hand to show where she is, that she is speaking. Yes, it was. Now, you all must understand we cannot talk about the details of what was said. Nezu's eyes trail around the classroom. And if any of the students are heard saying similar things, the teachers are free to expel them on the spot. How are we supposed to know what not to say if you won't talk about it? Shoto Todoroki asks, and 𝐬𝐻𝐸 glances over at the boy, who seems to really not know. Nezu glances at 𝐬𝐻𝐸, who shrugs and gestures for him to continue or just get it over with. All Might said something's talking down to Midoriya because of Midoriya's quirk status, Nezu says, looking back at Todoroki. Details are not important. However, if anyone has a problem with Midoriya's quirk status, please get out of my school and never come back. You're all heroes in training. You need to be better than the heroes before you. Now, back to All Might. Nezu grins slightly. I, for one, think we can still learn from All Might. However, if it will cause problems for Midoriya to be alone with him, I do not think it's best for him to teach us. Iida offers, and Nezu nods, gesturing for the next person who wants to speak. I would love to learn from All Might, Hagakure offers, even if he's just a Ta or something. I agree. Teaching assistant would be a fitting role for him, Aoyama offers, glittering slightly to sell his point. Now, that might work, but as of right now Midoriya may not be comfortable with that. However, I hope that he could settle for that in the next few weeks. Nezu's eyes land on 𝐬𝐻𝐸, who shrugs and then nods. Not today, but regardless, Midoriya, you are welcome to go to the support labs for the rest of the class time. Oh, and I would love to have you stop by for tea after school. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 grabs his bag, standing and nodding to Nezu, who quickly adds, take your hero suit too, make sure everything is up to your standards. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 watches the wall pop out and takes the one numbered 20. See you later, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 bids, waving to the rest of the class and Nezu. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 walks into the support labs confidently, or as confidently as he walked anywhere really. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 quickly spots May, who seems to be tinkering with something at her workstation. "Hey stranger," Izuku greets, smiling at Mei, who jumps up in shock. "I see you, 𝐀𝐦." She latches onto him, grinning, pulling him closer to her bench. "Look at our babies." Izuku grins at the 2 wristwatches-sized quirk erasing devices. "That's amazing, Mei. They're smaller than I thought they'd be." Izuku compliments, picking one up. "God, they're heavy though." Izuku and Mei run through a few of the uses of the devices. Izuku tries them on and they seem to fit perfectly. Making the device smaller was easy now that they knew where they went wrong last time, and how to project it a bit smoother. "So, each wristband can erase 3 quirks. Mei grins, giggling as Izuku switches the device off, turning back to her, nodding. "Seem like it. I'll try it out in heroics tomorrow." Izuku writes down a few notes, and, of course, I think we could do another couple chest or ankle ones as backups, in case someone damages the wrist pieces, you know. It would be useful as a hero too. "Oh, yes, and we could make the chest piece a bit bigger and stronger as well." Mei grins, writing her own messy notes. Not like she needs them as much as Izuku does, but she's only started taking them recently anyway. Izuku pulls his case onto the desk. "For now, though," Izuku grins, unlocking the case. "My new suit seems to need our specialty treatment after the end of the hour." Izuku tucks his newly modified suit away. It was fireproof, waterproof, and pretty much anything proof, but still breathable and lightweight. The hoodie also doubled as a fire blanket for rescue missions. Izuku was happy with how it looked. Though it was skin tight in the legs, it made his ass look better than it already was, according to Mei. Izuku was inclined to agree with her. Izuku's gloves were modified to include the quirk erasing projectors, and he also had a utility belt which was quickly filled with more mini explosives and some basic first aid supplies. Overall, the class was fun. Powerloader didn't really seem to mind Izuku's presence in his class, and it was the first time Izuku had ever been able to spend class time with someone who he really considered his friend. Katsuki didn't quite count again yet, and neither did any of the others who are in his class. Sure, they're friendly, but they weren't friends yet. Izuku needed to spend more than the few hours he had spent with them to become friends. Mei was different. She was so energetic, and she and Izuku bonded instantly. Izuku hadn't immediately bonded with anyone in that class. Uraraka, maybe, though pushing it. Not to mention, Izuku had a hard time setting boundaries when he met Mei. Not that he doesn't struggle now, but he was getting way better at it. Maybe they could be his friends. Izuku walks into Nedzu's office when the door opens on its own, glancing at the smiling Part rat. Chimera. Izuku sits down, picking up the iced tea the principal had already prepared for him. "Midoriya, how was your class with 𝐻𝐴TSUMI?" Nedzu asks, smiling as Izuku sips his tea. "Oh, you know, erased a few quirks, set some things on fire, explosions, just the usual, really." Izuku chuckles. "How about heroics? Any explosions?" Nedzu chuckles. "A few. Of course, Bakugo seems to be protective over you." "Yeah, we've known each other since we were kids." Izuku smiles, nodding slightly, "before he developed his quirk." "Ah, and was he supportive?" Nedzu asks, and Izuku just shakes his head. "Not really. I think he was just hurt because he had never heard of a quirkless hero. We wanted to be hero partners and I wasn't exactly... I guess intimidating would be the word, but I wasn't as intimidating as I am now. He just, I don't know, forgot that people can grow from what they were at 4 years old. His mom forced him to go to therapy last year after a villain incident." Izuku shakes his head. "Kaken was a hostage." Sort of. I'm aware of what happened during that incident. I searched for the new footage after what Aizawa said yesterday." Nedzu saves Izuku from any more awkward stuttering explanations. Izuku nods. "Right, so, I mean, he's supportive now, I guess. I mean, the ultim would have blown me sky high over beating him in the entrance exam." Izuku sips his tea. That would have been no good at all." Nedzu muses, sipping his own tea. "I assume you like quirk analysis." "Oh, definitely. Quirks are pretty cool. I mean, quirk theory in and of itself is complex, not to mention all the branches of quirk mutations, and quirklessness is pretty much a complete anomaly to most scientists, because it's becoming more rare, which is partially eugenics but mostly just natural selection too." Izuku barely breathes. I can't imagine what it was like pre-quirks. Nobody with a quirk. I mean, wow, people were still smart and they still made things. I mean, if quirkless people really were useless, you'd think we wouldn't have come as far as we did before the age of quirks. Sorry, I really shouldn't be talking about quirkless people being useless, but I mean, I haven't really met many people who didn't think that it's really nice to have Razor around. He was the first person to ever really be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now." Izuku bites down a few more words, but Nedzu didn't seem to mind his rambling. "Aizawa was the first person to ever support you, then?" Nedzu prompts, sipping his own tea while Izuku nods. "Though it was probably just to keep me out of trouble. I mean, I'm not sure if he told you how we met or anything." Izuku rubs the back of his head awkwardly. Nedzu chuckles, nodding. "He told me pieces of it. Enough for me to understand you have a complex sleeping schedule." Izuku snorts, chuckling slightly afterwards. Yeah, complex is a word for it. It gives me time to do my homework, I guess. I'll probably still train a bit, because I'm just kind of used to that. But I call it my spare time for a reason. Speaking of schedules, I want to talk with you more about what your schedule will look like here at UA. Nezu grins. I'm also willing to offer you some additional classes, which usually aren't available to first-year students, but you come highly recommended by a few heroes. And of course I understand you want to learn a few additional weapons before the sports festival this year, correct? Yeah. May has a few of her items she wants me to try. Not to mention our little projectors work better than ever. I'm actually really excited about the sports festival. I was also going to ask Snipe for lessons with a gun because, guns are pretty reliable as backups and stuff, and I know that Snipe is ranked the 3rd best gun hero in Japan, so learning from him would be amazing. Izuku sighs at the crowd of reporters surrounding the entrance to UA. Excuse me, young man. Are you in All Might's class? One reporter shoves a microphone in his face. Go away, Izuku snaps, glaring up at her. This is a school and you are all crowding the entrance. The woman takes a step back, surprised by Izuku's response. Izuku glances over at the purple-haired kid, who was trailing behind Izuku. Come on then. He hurries to walk behind Izuku into the school. Izuku notices a few more students and gestures for them to walk behind him. The woman seems to gain her confidence back, stepping forward again and putting her mic in Izuku's face. Is it true that there's a quirkless student in the hero course? Izuku sighs, rolling his eyes. Yeah, and do you think they deserve to be in such a prestigious school? Izuku raises an eyebrow. Are you saying they don't? No, I would never. The woman holds up her spare hand placatingly. I was just asking. Izuku just scoffs, shaking his head and walking in, falling into pace with Katsuki, who was using Izuku as a distraction to sneak by the reporters. Katsuki scoffs. You want me to go yell at her? No, as tempting as it may be, I don't want that affecting the school's image. Besides, I think Mr. Aizawa's got it covered. Izuku nods to Aizawa as he walks past, and Aizawa nods back, eyes narrowing in on the reporters. Though, being reminded of All Might every day will get really annoying if this keeps up. Those annoying extras better clear out by tomorrow. Katsuki snaps, rolling his eyes. I ain't gonna tolerate any bullshit, especially if it's over your Katsuki. It's over All Might being a teacher here. She was just asking about me because she knew she wasn't gonna get me to answer about All Might. Izuku rolls his eyes. Besides, they're leaving now, and I don't care if people know about my quirk or lack thereof. Katsuki grumbles, rolling his eyes. Yeah, whatever. Izuku snorts. You don't have any room to talk. Boy, shut up you damn nerd. Katsuki shouts, playfully slapping Izuku's arm. Izuku snorts again. There's the boy I know and love. He teases, hitting Katsuki's chest before he runs over to Mei, grinning. Mei. He hugs her tightly. Oh my god, how fucking annoying were those reporters? How are those boots coming? You think they'll be done by tomorrow or are we working on them after normal classes? Katsuki seems a bit off after Mei left, and Izuku frowns at him as he waves her goodbye. What? What do you mean what? Katsuki snaps, gritting his teeth. You seem, well if I didn't know any better, jealous. Izuku smirks slightly, teasing Katsuki. You aren't jealous, are you Kaken? Katsuki scoffs, pushing Izuku slightly. No way am I jealous of your fucking nerd friend. Izuku chuckles, righting himself after his slight stumble. Yeah, sure, my Kaken is not at all jealous of my Mei. I'm not your damn Kaken. Katsuki exclaims, and Izuku laughs. You'll always be my Kaken, you don't get a choice. The last thing Izuku wanted was to fight Katsuki, and this was Aizawa's way of getting back at Izuku for the crush comment the other day. However, Katsuki and Izuku weren't about to hold back just because they were friends. They were rivals first. They both were going to be the best heroes, and that meant beating each other in controlled school combat. They hadn't fought each other in an environment they didn't have to hold back in before. Plus, this was a way to see what the other was capable of. Izuku looks at Uraraka. She seems so nervous. She said something about her costume being too tight for her style, but she didn't seem all that nervous about it earlier. Maybe it was the combat training. Hey, it's just training, he gently reminds her. God, why did she look so scared? I know. It's just Mr. Aizawa was really gonna expel 𝐀𝐦 yesterday, and I'm sorry you look really scary in the hood. No, none of that. You can't let letting things like that distract you, especially in the field. Aizawa is irrelevant right now. Deal with him later. Right now, we have to get that bomb. Now, I know that Kaken will probably leave first, try and find me, so all you have to do is be quiet and find the bomb. Ada will probably take this very seriously, but I have a flashbang to distract him if you think you'll need it. Izuku opens up one of the compartments of his gloves, taking out the flashbang, which has a sticker label that Izuku double-checks before he hands it to Uraraka. You know how to use it. You just pull the pin, right? She seems more nervous now. God, Izuku was terrible at the whole comforting thing, huh? Izuku nods, smiling at her. Yep, then toss it. Only use it if you have to. Close your eyes when you use it. Izuku pulls up the schematics of the building, analyzing it a bit closer. Ada would mostly likely move everything you could use your quirk on out of the room, so maybe you could start bringing rubber pellets or something for your quirk in your next suit. Anyway, it'll probably be floor 4 or 5. Keep your ears and eyes open. I don't know exactly what 𝐴𝐻 is, but it's like 𝐸𝐸. His costume even looks like 𝐸𝐸, so he's really fast. Set up a trap with the capture tape for him if he seems like too much trouble. Izuku folds the map, tucking it away. In a narrow space, bounce on the walls. Ada will have trouble tracking your movements. He's too stiff. In a large space, try to take the high ground. I can't use my quirk on myself for very long. Uraraka confesses. Then make it as fast as you can. As long as I buy you enough time, you can get to the bomb easier than I can. Probably. Izuku adjusts the holster for his staff, moving it over slightly. That would be annoying. It was practically nut-shotting him and he couldn't imagine trying to run with it there. Needs to be moved. Shame, this suit was almost perfect. Alright, let's get to it. Aizawa's voice echoes through the comms and Izuku nods to Uraraka. Let's win this. Uraraka cheers. And her and Izuku start walking around the building after Izuku gestures for her to follow. Window. That's the window, second floor. Already opened and everything. Izuku helps Uraraka up into the window, then uses the other building next to it to bounce up and grab the window seal. Man, these walls are weird. Probably quirk-proof. A lot of corners. Earchecks. Jiru would probably have an advantage in this environment. She wouldn't be as blindsided as Izuku or Uraraka right now, at least. Izuku pauses. Katsuki could be incredibly quiet, so Izuku needs to stay alert. He stops by a corner near the stairwell. Alright, Uraraka, why don't you? Izuku is cut off by an explosion, which he jumps back from and pushes Uraraka out of the range. Go. Uraraka only hesitates for a second before she runs. Izuku grins at Katsuki, who grins back, taking a battle stance. Let's do this, nerd, Katsuki calls. And Izuku comes at him running, staff at the ready to launch Izuku over him to start playing a small game of hide and explode like they did when they were kids. Izuku pretends to trip, watching Katsuki's brief shock before Izuku launches himself up at an angle with the staff. God, he loved this thing. Not to mention the training he had with it meant he wasn't just launching himself into the roof right now but down the hallway. Katsuki could catch up with a big enough explosion. Though the exam had just started and Katsuki probably didn't have enough sweat to do that. Keyword, probably. Izuku ran, weaving his way through the hallways easily, occasionally giggling and letting the echo freak Katsuki out and also confuse him. Creepy echoing giggles, which he can't tell where they're coming from. Perfect psychological manipulation right there. Not to mention the way Izuku was specifically giggling into the vents. He could probably fit in the vents, to be honest, but this was fun. Izuku hears a few explosions and rolls his eyes, running down a few more hallways. Aizawa had already taught him how to keep his footsteps quiet, even while running. Now Izuku didn't move any other way. Silence is the default. He has a few decoys in one of his pouches. This was a chance to use them. Decoys were the hardest grenades for Izuku and Mei to make. The noise-making compartment was actually quite difficult to build. Izuku wasn't even sure if it was gonna work. But, hey, throw one of these in the vent. Deku, Katsuki calls out, rounding a corner and Izuku ducks around another corner just in time to avoid being spotted. I hear you, you little bastard. Izuku could help but grin. Of course, he could. Izuku made sure that Katsuki could hear him. Izuku reaches up from his crouched position, turning the handle of one of the doors quietly. Hopefully, this fake apartment has a window, so Izuku could slip outside and back inside in a different room. Midoriya, Uraraka whispers, I found Ada and the bomb. You were right about him clearing everything I could use my quirk on. Izuku slips into the room, silently closing the door. Use the flashbang and get that bomb. Kakin is still on me. Izuku opens the window, climbing onto the ledge. I'm about to throw him off a little bit, but I'll see you after we've won. Izuku pulls out one of his grenades. They don't need that wall, right? Izuku giggles again, waiting until the doorknob starts turning before he pulls the pin and tosses the grenade. It hits Katsuki's surprised face before it starts to fall. Shit, was that a dud? Izuku pulls himself out of the window right as the grenade hit the ground, which finally triggers it. Note to self, grenades need work on chamber triggering after pin release. Izuku moves quickly, jumping between the buildings and gracefully landing in one of the open windows, looking around. Just another fake apartment. Izuku slips back into the hallway, tossing a decoy down the hallway the opposite way to what he's going. Alrighty, Uraraka. The hero team has won. Head out of the building and do not trigger any more grenades. Midoriya, Aizawa's voice echoes over the comms, and Izuku giggles again, heading back through the apartment and climbing down the side of the building. Wow, we won. Uraraka exclaims as she walks out the front of the build, smiling at Izuku, who nods and grins back. Shit, Katsuki swears, throwing up his hands. How the fuck did you do that, you shitty nerd? Izuku chuckles, shrugging. Midoriya, Uraraka, congratulations on winning. Ada says stiffly, even if you did use some underhanded tactics. Grenades aren't underhanded. Izuku deflects, rolling his eyes, putting his hands casually in his pockets. Ada stiffens more, which Izuku was surprised was even possible. I apologize if I offended you with that statement, it's fine. Izuku mumbles, shrugging. Izuku looks at Katsuki. You need to work on your noise reduction. I could hear you coming for most, if not all of that. Izuku and Uraraka sat down next to each other while Eraser and Snipe asks the class questions about their performance. Does anyone know why they won? Eraser asks, looking around the room with his eyes hard, daring someone to say something wrong. I'd say it was planning on Jiro states. Leaning forward in his chair, they came up with an effective plan in under 5 minutes. You're on the right track, Snipe encourages, but how did they make such an effective plan? They knew what Bakugo and Ada would do, Momo says, and Izuku looks over to her. She's hard to read, but he had to admit she was pretty smart. That was good. It meant she was going to become a very effective hero. That's not fair. They've known each other for, years, Minda whines. Eraser sighs. Well, Midoriya has known Bakugo for years at this point. He has only known Ida for as long as you have, being 3 days. I would say he effectively understood my line of thinking and created a counter for it, Ida offers, gesturing with one of his arms. Excellent. Now, does anyone have any suggestions for improvement for either team? Snipe asks, arms folded proudly in front of his chest. I do, Izuku offers, getting a nod of approval before he continues. Ada, you're really stiff. Seriously, with your brother being so laid back I thought you'd be too. But anyway, just maybe figure out why you can't relax a bit. And Kaken, I already told you, noise reduction. Also, maybe, change whatever the fuck is going on with those grenade gauntlets. Make them slimmer, at the least. Katsuki looks at his gauntlets, offended. No way, Kaken, they're so bulky. Izuku complains, I guarantee they'll get caught on something. I know May could probably fix it up so you still get the same firepower. Just let it be smaller. That's enough, Eraser says. Midoriya, Bakugo has every right to keep his support items the same as they are. Bakugo, if you want to take this advice I can get the paperwork sorted out by the end of the week. Right, sorry, Razor, Izuku mutters, shifting in his seat slightly. Razor, Snipe repeats, chuckling slightly and lightly elbowing Aizawa. Aizawa scowls at the action but doesn't respond to him. Up next we have Shoji and Todoroki as heroes against 𝐬𝐸 and 𝐸𝐻𝐸. Please make your way to the training grounds. Aizawa reads from the paper, looking up at the 4 students addressed. This was a really good way to assess his classmates. Izuku was glad he had a notebook on him because he now had the basic notes for everyone in his class. Todoroki's improvement was mostly going to be psychological, but both his quirks would be incredibly powerful in a way that was irritating because Izuku didn't even get 1 quirk. But Todoroki got 2. 𝐸𝐻𝐸 really needs to work more on her general stealth, not to mention getting more comfortable in her body if her hero costume was really going to be nothing. Couldn't support items be made out of DNA? Wouldn't those be helpful, especially in winter? It's a shame he didn't get to see how 𝐬𝐸 moved with his tail in combat. But given his outfit, he was trained. Shoji's quirk was wildly being underused because having multiple arms would be useful in combat, but it didn't come down to combat because Shoji could hear anyone who was coming. Izuku would struggle with someone like him, and Izuku actually made notes to spare with him at some point. Any weak spots in Izuku defense could mean life or death, and Izuku was not having it. Izuku stayed behind slightly, waiting until the other students leave before he approaches Aizawa. So, Izuku grins slightly. Izuku? Huh? Since when are we on a first-name basis? Shut up, Aizawa mutters playfully. Izuku chuckles slightly. It's alright, I'm happy to call you 𝐬𝐸 or Razor. Izuku shrugs, and he looks over at Snipe as he clears his throat. Oh, hi. Nedzu said something about you wanting extra training with me. Snipe eyes 𝐬𝐸 and Izuku. Oh, Izuku jolts slightly. Yes. I want to learn how to use a gun. Also a bow and arrow. Problem child, 𝐬𝐸 warns. And Izuku waves him off. It's fine, 𝐬𝐸. Oh, and are you still down to train in the middle of the night? Izuku asks, flicking to a new page in his notebook. My body settled into that sleep schedule and I really don't want to change it. So, yeah, Snipe, I can train with you on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and if you're down to come in on Sundays or something. You're okay with double training on Wednesdays but not Saturdays? 𝐬𝐸 asks, looking over Izuku's shoulder to see what he's writing. Oh, no, Saturday's lab day. You know how May and I get with support items. Izuku waves him off. Same with Friday afternoons. Oh, should I be worried about Hatsune and you hanging out so often? 𝐬𝐸 teases, grinning slightly when Izuku blushes. No, she's a friend. Besides, Izuku cuts himself off, remembering something girlfriend-related from the other night. Oh, by the way, which one of your friends knows Rumi? I have apparently been talked about. Something about you being proud and adopting me. Rumi, you're on a first-name basis with the number 5 top hero. Snipe questions and Izuku frowns over to him. Yeah, she. Oh, wait, I probably should not bring that up. Izuku bites his lips slightly. No, I think she'd tell you if you ask, but I can't really say. Izuku, training schedule, remember? 𝐬𝐴 brings Izuku's attention back. Oh, right, so I'm actually double training on Mondays and Wednesdays and I've got extra lessons with Nezu on Tuesdays. Izuku reads over his notes. Actually, I don't think I should put any training on Sundays. You don't want to burn yourself out. 𝐬𝐴 agrees. The fact that you're trying this hard is nice, but you will burn out quickly if you don't have other things going on. Izuku tilts his head. Every hobby I have related to hero work in some way. My analysis, support items, gymnastics, and even my drawing, to an extent. I mean, Izuku shrugs. I think that's just what happens when you don't have friends for ages. You need to make time for your new friends too, 𝐬𝐴 reminds him. Shit, that's true. I don't know, maybe my Monday training can be flexible. Izuku mutters. This was the second day the press was out the front of UA. And Izuku was irritated. He just couldn't get a break from the All Might talk. Izuku was irritated as he pushed his way through the reporters, but not so irritated that he didn't notice some guy just standing across the road, looking at the reporters. Maybe he was another reporter who was seeing who these reporters got to talk to willingly and would then talk to them after school. Seems like, considering. But something about him was off. It didn't help Izuku's mood. Though, as a plus, Izuku did have his first lesson with Snipe today after heroics. Or well, after when heroics is supposed to be. Izuku tries to ignore the press again. And he even grabs the purple-haired guy's sleeve to pull him past the ever-swarming reporters. You can let me go now, he says, and Izuku drops his sleeve, nodding. Thanks I guess. No problem. These reporters are getting on my nerves anyway. Izuku smiles at the boy, searching for a different conversation topic. So, general studies any good? The boy scoffs. I wanted to get into the hero course. Oh, shit, so this is kinda a kick in the ass then. Do you think you could get in through the sports festival? I'd prefer you over mine to the fucking slime ball. The boy blinks. You aren't even gonna ask about me quirk, he asks, even if it's typically associated with villains. Hey, I don't believe in putting people into a box because of their quirks. Just, I don't know, train hard, talk with a few support students. Hell, I could introduce you to my friend, May. She was complaining about not being able to use all her babies in the festival, so I'm sure she'd be happy to loan you some. Hope you don't mind paperwork, though. Izuku pauses. Being a hero is a lot of paperwork, so I guess it's good practice. You're willing to help me out. You don't even know my name. The lavender boy seems shocked. And like it's too good to be true. Oh, right. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku extends his hand. What's her name? My Midoriya. As in first place in the entrance exam Midoriya. The boy runs his hand through his hair, somehow making it stick up further before he slaps his hand into Izuku to shake. I'm Hitoshi Shinsu. We're friends now, Izuku announces, dragging a now extremely confused Hitoshi by his wrist. Come on, who's your homeroom teacher? Present Mike. Hitoshi offers, stumbling after the boy, horror evident in his tone. Why? What are you doing after your classes today? Are you free for like an hour or so? Izuku asks, knocking on the staff room door confidently. I guess. Hitoshi still seems a bit reluctant. Izuku smirks at him, then pushes open the staff room door. Present Mike. I'm borrowing Hitoshi for an hour. 𝐬𝐴, I won't be in homeroom today, Izuku announces, and to his surprise, 𝐬𝐴 groans, rolling over in his yellow sleeping bag. No problem, child. You need to pick a class president today. 𝐬𝐴 mumbles, barely opening his eyes. Since when do you know Hitoshi? Since like 10 minutes ago. Izuku looks at Hitoshi, who shrugs. How do you know 𝐬𝐴? Hitoshi asks, and why does us being friends mean that you get to call me by my first name? Oh, I call all my friends by their first name or a nickname. I could always call you Toshi if you prefer. Izuku shrugs, and Razor's been training me for, what was it, 9 months? 𝐬𝐴 groans. Oh my god, is this the quirkless kid? Hitoshi blurts, laughing. Dad's been talking non-fucking stop about some kid who has been annoying the shit out of 𝐬𝐴 like it's his fucking job. That you, isn't it? Izuku blushes slightly, scuffing the floor with his foot. Oh, I mean, it's not my job, but yes, your dad's Robin, yeah. How did you? Hitoshi pauses, staring at Izuku. Hey, you guys look super similar. Not to mention you look like 𝐬𝐴 here too, Izuku shrugs. Wait, when did you meet Robin? 𝐬𝐴 asks, and Izuku rolls his eyes. The first time we ever met. Izuku shrugs. I vaguely remember cutting him off and running away if that's help. Eraser sighs. Yep, I remember now. God, you're almost a completely different person now. He looks Izuku up and down as if trying to connect the two of them as the same person. Yep, Izuku chuckles, leaning forwards over 𝐡𝐻's sleeping bag. A healthy dose of therapy and self-confidence means I'm now forever gonna annoy the shit out of you. Oh, joy, 𝐡𝐻 sarcastically remarks, rolling his eyes. Let me sleep, hellion. There's no point. The bell goes in like 20 seconds. Izuku checks his watch, nodding to himself. Shit, 𝐡𝐻 groans slightly, standing. All right, you win. I'll walk Hitoshi to his class and then I'll come to make sure that you haven't accidentally thrown someone, or yourself, out the window or something. Someone? Izuku chuckles, shaking his head. He'd deserve, not that I would. I'm just talking in the hypothetical, obviously. 𝐡𝐻 rolls his eyes. As the bell goes, I'll see you in a few minutes, get to class. Izuku nods, waving goodbye to Hitoshi before he heads to his classroom. The quiet chatter immediately stops when he enters, but he tried not to pay it any mind. He sits in his seat, leaning back in his chair with a sigh. Class president. Eda would be good if he had someone looser as his vice. Someone like Kaminari, kind of easygoing, playful, a little bit dumb. Maybe Zero, he seems pretty laid back. Maybe Asui or Uraraka would be better though. Asui, she might be too blunt to handle sensitive subjects though. Uraraka, too nervous. All right, 𝐡𝐻 calls, drawing the attention of the whole class. Today, you're deciding a class president. I don't care who it is or how you decide as long as it's quiet. 𝐡𝐻 then slips back into his sleeping bag and rolls over. Tired, grumpy man. I think the simplest option would be to hold a vote, Eda suggests, standing from his seat to draw everyone's attention. You idiot. Then everyone will just vote for themselves. Katsuki snaps, though it is quieter than what it would have once been. Exactly. Therefore the person with the most vote is the best candidate for the job, Eda says. And there is a murmur of agreement. Then it's settled. Let's vote. Midoriya Izuku Asui Tsuyu Momo Yaoyorozu. All right. We should vote between Asui and Momo. Why not just rock, paper, scissors? Izuku asks, letting his chair fall back onto all four legs. Well, that isn't an accurate representation of who the class wants to lead us. All I'm saying is they got the same number of votes to lead the classroom and another vote would take too long before the bell goes. Izuku raises his hands innocently, shrugging slightly. I mean, if you want this to run into our first class, Eda sighs. Very well, you are technically the class president and I value your input. All right, it looks like Midoriya is the class president with Asui as his vice, 𝐡𝐻 announces, slightly covering the lower half of his face with his capture scarf, probably to hide a proud smile. He cares about Izuku. It could happen. Both of you, come up to the front. Izuku stands, walking to the front and standing next to Asui. Shove that anxiety away. It won't help you be a better class president. Okay. What the hell do you say in this situation? Thank you guys for this amazing opportunity. Izuku smiles slightly, bowing. I can't wait to work with all of you and please call me Tsu. Asui, Tsu bows as well, and the bell signals for them to find their seats again. At lunch, Izuku finds himself sitting at a full table with Katsuki, Mei, Kirishima, Tsu, Uraraka, and Hitoshi. Katsuki, Kirishima, and Izuku sat on one side with a chair available to Kirishima's left, and Hitoshi, Mei, Tsu, and Uraraka sat on the other side of the table with no spare chairs. Hey, Uraraka, do you mind if I start calling you Ochako? Kiri, Ijiro. Oh, no. Why do you ask? I try to call all my friends by their first names, Izuku explains, shrugging. How come you didn't ask me and just started calling me my first name? Hitoshi frowns. Oh, I just didn't think about it. This is Mei, by the way. Izuku gestures to Mei. She and I will be in the support labs this afternoon, and we expect you to be there too. Ooh, what are we doing? Mei asks, reaching around Ochako to grab Hitoshi's arm. I'm gonna make you so many babies. The reaction of shocked faces around the table is enough to make Izuku burst out laughing. Her Su support items. Idiots. Izuku wheezes slightly. She calls them her baby. They are my babies, Izuku, Mei defends, grinning slightly at Hitoshi, who gulps. Oh, fuck, why do I attract the crazy ones? That's 2 in one day. I shouldn't have agreed to this. Hitoshi mumbles, shrinking away slightly. Izuku grins at Hitoshi, and the taller of the two seems to pale just a bit more.